It is good. Welcome to episode 10 of the O2 Dropcast, where if we don't talk about it, you shouldn't fucking care about it. This is our 10th episode, so I think this is probably going to be, this is like the season finale, right?
I guess.
Like 10 episodes?
Yeah, right?
This is the season finale with Mr. Michael Day. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. We have Mr. Anthony Rivera.
Thank you. Glad to be here, finally.
Yeah.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Mr. Daniel Espinoza.
What's up, guys?
And then, of course, I'm your host, Zach Zent. Today on the O2 Dropcast, what we do is we talk mainly about stuff going on here in Arizona. So this is an Arizona Eternal Magic podcast. If you are listening to this outside of Arizona, we don't really care about you. Yeah.
There's still some good stuff.
Yeah, no, there's...
Depends on the state. Fuck
Yeah.
California, fuck you.
Yeah, for sure, California, fuck you.
New York, also probably fuck you.
Nevada's okay because they have Las
Yeah.
Vegas, yeah. So
To
if
be
you're...
fair, I'm from Indiana, so
Indiana's
might
fuck
leak
Indiana.
into the Midwest. I'm sorry. They're all very polite about telling us to fuck off.
Gotcha. Well, fuck Indiana.
With all due respect,
Yeah.
fuck
With
off.
all due respect, fuck off.
respect. Yeah, I don't really care about Indiana. What's some other states we don't care about?
New Mexico.
Georgia, right?
Oh, yeah.
Georgia.
Everyone's boycotting Georgia right now.
Oh, yeah. Fuck Georgia.
This
so
shouldn't
fuck
even-
Georgia.
This shouldn't even be released in Georgia.
we're gonna
You can
block
actually
this.
What
do
about West
reporting this
Virginia? Is there anything like important or noteworthy there?
country roads.
Hillbillies.
Take me home.
Hillbillies. Okay. Yeah. Fuck West Virginia too.
And there went the no discrimination, just right out the window. 30 seconds in.
Hillbillies was
discriminating.
not on the list of words we weren't allowed to
All right. Well, so if you're listening to this outside of Arizona, this is mainly an Arizona podcast. What we're doing today is we're going to be talking about some cards and Legacy, talking about the meta and stuff. But then we are also going to talk about our latest event that we had with 44 players. At
44?
44 at Snapcasters Gaming and Espresso. So that's mainly what we're going to be talking about. But first, I really have to know, Anthony Rivera,
say. Yes.
you hate blue, right?
No, I actually don't hate blue.
Okay.
It is commonly conceived that I hate blue.
Okay.
I actually just like
Everything-
threat density over threat quality. I
Interesting. Okay.
do not like cantripping into my good cards. I just like drawing them.
Okay. Fair
and
enough.
yet you hate the deck that I played to win this tournament.
You say played like you made any relevant decisions
I'm
throughout
sorry,
the
this
course of
deck
the day.
built properly to solitaire its opponents to death with insane threat density.
Correct.
Actually, it does have pretty good threat density. Yeah,
I get to play the only vampiric tutor in the format.
it's true.
I have 12 copies of a card that makes Grizzlebrand by turn 2. And then fucking Grizzlebrand.
Yeah. Well, spoilers. Mr. Michael Day took down our tournament. You can actually find all the results on MTG Top 8. It's up there. You can find him whooping people's ass on stream on our YouTube channel. And you can find links to all of that on ArizonaEternalMagic.com. We'll have it in the show notes as well. But
Did we actually cast a single game of his outside of the finals?
No, in fact,
Oh.
what was said to me was,
there you go.
in no fucking universe will I ever, and I repeat ever, stream that deck live. And so I kind of had to.
And that's a
You
direct.
had- you had
that's
to
a
make it to
direct
the
quote
finals.
from who?
This gentleman. right
Myself.
here.
Oh, Mr. Rivera.
Rivera.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And I actually, the very first round, I was told who I had to stream.
Yeah,
and
my
I got
bad.
to watch about 3.5 minutes of Fury casting your deck pilot with another pilot.
Oh, great.
Actually, I was watching, so I didn't watch a lot of it until it was posted, but Anthony, you did really well. Jim did actually really well too. I was going to talk shit, but both of you guys did a really good job casting stuff.
I really appreciated the coverage. I
Yeah.
know that by the time we get to criticizing my mulliganing choices, I will concede that you guys had that better than I did. But, I felt like I was in my opponent's head. I don't know.
See, I actually don't
All
think
right.
I cast your match. I was actually playing my league match at the time.
Oh, you were too busy vomiting in the bathroom. For
yeah,
that
I
deck
told
having made
you
it to the
I wouldn't
finals.
cast yours,
At all.
so
Got
I
it.
went and did something else.
I love it.
Fair. At least you know where the line is, and you hold up. You don't
don't
just
cross that
roll
line.
over. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
good.
Man of
said
integrity.
what I would and would not do. Just past anal is casting Black Red Reanimator.
And so when I forced it on you to continue that analogy,
Those are like really far apart for me. So all right.
Sorry.
And then SB, how'd your week go, man?
My week has been well. It's
Yeah?
only Monday, but it's tournament wise.
Yeah.
I went 4-2. I lost to yours truly, Michael Day. So he was my
4-2.
first loss.
4-2. That's pretty good for the an O2 Dropcast.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
a new record for the O2 Dropcast. But no, so I played against Michael round 3, and he took me down in 3. So like game 3, he just had like the land Dark Ritual into
What were you playing?
Reanimate. I was on Turbo Depths or Medium Depths or whatever.
and to be fair, you were the actual first game loss I'd taken on the day.
I took a game
Wow.
off of him.
Wow.
But yeah, then game 3, I think I mulled a bit, and he just had the Turn 1 Grizzle, and I could not deal with it.
Yeah. So why'd you pick Dark Depths going into the tournament, though?
It's the deck I've had the most success with over the last few years.
Gotcha.
I've tried to play other decks, and I just always regret not playing Turbo Depths. It's a super powerful deck, and I think I psych myself out thinking that it's not good in the meta. Going to Niagara a couple months
Yeah.
ago, I expected lots of white decks, but it's pretty clear now that Blue Red Delver is a big stakeholder of the meta, which is not bad
It's
now.
insane.
Yeah,
the
it's
good
a
players
it's
play.
a great deck.
Blue Red Delver just became like top 3 decks in Legacy
It's
because
definitely
of
hardcore tier 1.
yeah,
but
because of
so-
some card printings.
yeah, so I'm just gonna play Turbo Depths at every big tournament. And
Okay,
not
you
risk
heard it here. So if you're trying to spot what SB's going to be on, you know it.
I mean, that being said, as much as I disagree with a lot of SCB's play lines,
Yeah.
he has single-handedly established Dark Depths as a force in this state. Like, sideboards are ready. There are Pithing Needles and Blood
Yeah.
Moons,
Yeah,
mostly and only because of Mr. Espinoza.
yeah,
Yeah.
So
Sideboard
he
slots
definitely
not.
puts in real work with the deck.
yeah. I tried playing it, and I had some moderate success with it, kind of F&Ms for a month or so. But it's a little bit more intricate than I was expecting for sure. Especially the slow depths version. You have more choices with removal. What do I remove here? What do I counter? Or what do I take with the discard? When do I combo off? Because it's a little bit it plays slower for sure.
Yeah.
That is the interesting part. But SB, if I am correct, is not actually playing the slow depths.
No,
version.
he's on
doing
medium.
SB, what are you on right now?
I don't like Mox Diamond. I know that's really unpopular opinion, but I do Lotus Petal still. So I play the different school of thought is you don't play Pithing Needles, you play Wasteland instead. You play Mox Diamonds. And that's really the main difference because I still play Dark Confidant, which the Mox Diamond builds run.
Yeah.
But I can't not play at least 3 Pithing Needles in my main board.
Gotcha.
I just think it's a way more versatile card than Wasteland. I know Wasteland's to protect the Dark Depths, but Needle's just a better card in my opinion. So I play kind of my own version of. It's in between, right? I love Lotus Petal because you're not trying to like draw out your mana forever. You just need it quickly so you can win. And sometimes having to pitch an important land is not worth it. So yeah, I'm running that, and then I will touch on the key card for my weekend was Blast Zone. I
yeah?
have one of those. Yeah, I have one of those.
about that.
All right, we'll talk
card is
about that
so
here in a minute.
good.
But you thumbs up on the Blast
Blast
Zone?
Zone is insane, especially
right.
with Blue Red Delver becoming a popular
Oh,
deck.
fuck yeah! I didn't actually think about
Yeah,
that.
you just play it, and they can't commit to the board too much.
Yeah, they can't
otherwise
do
they're
shit.
gonna lose it.
Yeah,
So.
with their tokens or whatever. 1, 2,
Uncounterable
3.
pernicious deed against their deck.
It's
It's
insane.
fucking
It's
good.
stupid.
Yeah. I mean, I guess
Engineer
you'd have to have
explosives.
you would have to have a Wasteland immediately. For
Correct.
It.
And
yeah.
Needle's usually all. If I'm playing that Wasteland, Needle is already on Wasteland.
Yeah, yeah,
So.
that's smart. Yeah, Tony Murata, you always know he's gonna just like turn one needle into Wasteland.
Oh yeah,
and-
even if
yeah.
he knows you're not playing Wasteland, he still does it.
Yeah, yeah.
I
'Cause
actually,
he's smart.
Yeah.
my league match this week was against Tony Murata
How'd it go?
in the lands 12 post matchup. Blast Zone was the easily undisputed MVP. I mean,
no shit.
Pithing Needles. I took it 2-1 in 3 really good games.
Yeah.
Super close, and it was Red Green Lands versus Tony Murata's 12-post deck. His deck did
Is he on the green blue?
He's on the green
Or
now.
just
straight green
Straight
right
green.
now
Okay.
with Ancient
Okay.
Stirrings. He doesn't have the Karn's Mane yet, but I believe that's definitely something he should do.
I think he has them in there now.
Not right now as when we were playing.
Not for the league.
For FNM, he
match.
had
For the
them.
Yeah,
FNM,
yeah.
he probably had him in. We talked about it after our match. Blast Zone was the only reason I won. It killed Pithing Needles, the $700 candelabras, and I think I even got an expedition map on a game.
Out of curiosity, have they ever made a card like that before? It's a land
No.
that destroys multiple permanents.
No, or else it would be in Legacy.
Right.
Yeah, the lands and Legacy, especially with the
It's got some good printings,
between
man.
the deck that SB plays. You have crop rotations. You have Sylvan
Sylvan Scrying.
Sylvan Scrying,
Expedition
and you
map.
have the expedition maps. As they print more lands that do more things, these Lex and Legacy are just going to assimilate them instantly. I mean, Blast Zone had a home in multiple 3-4 decks the second it was printed. I know.
Right. It's
Yep.
just surprising to see that ability on a land. But
Yeah.
It is.
Amen.
It's a sweeper on a land.
We're
Exactly.
still just waiting for the counterspell land.
That would be so crazy too.
So the guy
we
that
have the
wanted to create-
anti-counterspell land already. We have the
now
Sage.
but we're waiting for
Yeah.
a counterspell land.
We have the copy land, right? We have the blow up stuff land. We have the return artifact land. And we just got a return enchantment
Correct.
land to the
Just
top.
gonna return
yes,
We got
Volrath's
return
Stronghold,
creature
4
as well.
enchantments.
Yeah, so we have Volgrath's Stronghold, right, for creatures.
It's Stronghold for creatures, Academy Ruins for artifacts. It's Heliod's Hall of Generosity for enchantments.
Yeah.
And that's 3 out of the set. So we're still missing a red one, and we're missing the green
And someone
of the cycle.
But it's all been spoiled, though, right?
It's in the future.
Oh,
But
future
it's
sets.
for a future. Yeah,
We
people
think
have been
about it.
people have
they're
been
going to do
waiting.
something matching. Probably.
People have been
yeah.
waiting for this
Yeah.
enchantment, exact printing, exactly the card for years. People
Yeah.
have been talking about it forever.
Really?
I've seen it spoiled 5 or 6 times. People that like land things have been waiting for this card in its exact iteration.
Well, I'm going to trust you because I'm not. Let's call it.
savvy.
Let's call it
Literate?
ballsy enough to want to play a non-blue deck in Legacy.
Are we talking about this card now? Because
we can if you want.
Okay, so just on this card specifically, what makes it interesting that it was printed right now is in the current Legacy state, it's probably too slow.
Okay.
It's probably an unplayable card,
Okay.
which is sad. 5-6 years ago, maybe that was fine, and there might be some.
What would be different about it to make it more playable in Legacy? If you were going to design the card yourself or tweak something about the card, what would you do?
The card's great. It just opens you up to you're skipping a draw step. You're missing. You have
Yeah.
to be getting something back very specific.
Specifically,
That you already used once. I mean, in the most egregious use you could think of right now, it's going to be getting back your chokes, getting back your powerful
What
enchantments.
about standstill?
Yeah,
getting
let's ask
back-
that question.
Yeah, I was
back your
thinking standstill or
and a blue-white
pernicious deed.
But those are probably already in the graveyard at this point, which means you've already used them, so you already have your value.
It's
But
true.
specifically, the standstill lock means you're playing a bunch of colorless manlands. You're playing this card, which now allows you to land-based recur your standstill. Presumably, you do that in your upkeep and then play it in your main phase and attack them for 2 or 4. How do they get out?
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you skip your draw step because you draw 3 every time
But
you draw
you've
a card.
already done all the things that you need to do to win the game at that point. You already
So
have.
it's a win more.
It's going to be a win more.
It's a win.
card.
It's kind of like a lock piece, right?
when
like
was the last time
it
you
would
saw a stronghold or an Academy Ruin?
Well, the thing is, though, if you pernicious deed or you stasis and whatever they draw cards, right, or standstill and they draw cards.
So stasis is interesting.
Stasis would might yeah.
Stay on that thread.
So you use it and you have this land out. Yes, I get it that you're already probably in a good spot, but it's kind of like playing against a counterbalance. You don't completely scoop, but the threat of you being locked out of the game is pretty real if you present Pernicious Deed or whatever enchantment that you're trying to lock them out with, plus the fact of
So about 10 years ago, Intuition was still a playable card.
Still
And that's
is, boy.
where
Still is.
Intuition, Life from Alome, and whatever you were going to recur.
Don't make me talk about another new card on this list.
Intuition,
Making Intuition a real card again.
Life from Alome, getting an Academy Ruins, you're getting
Yeah.
a Volrath Stronghold, plus whatever the recur will target in the matchup. That was a thing. That was played in Tog decks. That was played
Yeah.
in old school. I believe it was called River Rock.
Yeah.
Way back in the day. I don't know if you guys played back then. But that was right when Tarmogoyf was taking over.
Did you play Legacy back then?
Yes, I've played
Okay.
Legacy pretty much the entire time.
Okay.
Since the split.
Okay, cool.
Baller.
Since
But-
there was a legacy.
Since there was since
Right.
it was 1-5.
All right.
And then everything
Well, I don't know that. So, like, and
Walrus-
probably the
Walrus
listeners don't know that as
Stronghold. Yeah.
well. So, you've been playing Legacy forever. Just
Yes,
like,
I've been playing Legacy forever.
I mean,
That is
might be
dope.
a decent throwback. We can go back 20 some years maybe, and you're talking about extended and standard Type 1 versus Type 2. That naming and nomenclature was all over the map.
Yep.
And now they've really solidified what we call things, but in terms of making that a format, what did you experience when you saw that split?
Well, 1-5 was in and of itself what Legacy became, but it was
Yeah.
it was Type 1, but there were no restricted cards. They were all
They were
banned,
banned.
which
Yeah.
means people still played with mana drains. People still played with workshops. People still played with, like, Dragon was still a deck. Like,
Yeah.
Dragon was
Enter the Dragon,
The best
Animate
deck.
Dead, yes.
Animate Dead,
Bizarre,
Infinite,
yeah.
Bizarre, Infinite. That was
sounds
real.
so fun,
Food
dude.
Chain Goblins was a very real deck because
Yeah.
Ringleader was still, or not Ringleader,
Recruiter.
Recruiter was still a card.
the Goblin Recruiter. Yeah.
Goblin Recruiter. You stack
Yeah.
your whole library, combo kill them, and people would have, with that card specifically, people had their specific stacks written down,
Right.
and memorized, so they knew what to
That
how
was
to
a list 16
how
cards
to
long,
stack
right?
it. Oh, that was a list, 30 cards long.
There we
It-
go.
It was how they were going to stack their deck to play for the rest. So either they could combo kill you if they knew you had one counter spell, they set it up a certain way. If they were playing board sweeps, they set their library up a different way. It
That's
was
gross.
awful.
That is gross.
Shahrazad was still a card
Oh,
where
God.
people could force draws in more games. There's actually a really good story. A player here in town, he had a deck. It was a troll deck.
Who shall remain nameless, or
Yeah, he can remain
Perfect.
nameless. I'm not sure if he wants to be on a thing, but it's basically a little local legend. It was 46 Shahrazards, something like that, and 18 planes.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, you should just he should definitely remain nameless
So
because
sub game.
So he would only
that man
he
is
would
still masturbating.
he would pull
right
it
now.
out. He would pull it out just to troll people. Like back in the day, there was some, you'd call them like the Super Salt players before Salt
Sure.
was a thing.
Yeah.
And he would pull that out in tournaments.
Yeah,
And
SP's predecessors.
The SP's
Yes.
predecessors. The first game, they'd be like, fine, let's just go to a next game. The second time, they'd be like, how'd you draw both of them? The third sub game, the guy's rolling his eyes and visibly boiling.
Yes.
The fourth sub game, you can't believe what you're seeing. As usually the way they do is they would just scoot a chair down so you never touched the game that you were in.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
you're
God.
taking up an entire 8-foot table for this. The fifth sub game is where the guy completely lost his mind, called the judge, got
Yeah.
the deck, and everyone in the
or
room knew what was
possibly got
missing.
arrested for aggravated assault on his opponent.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean,
Now,
if
there
you
is a
played
Pro
that,
Tour top 8 that involved, I think it was Antoine Ruel citing an Ancestral Recall into his standard deck because his matchup was so atrocious. He was playing
Wow.
Howling
It was
or Owling
in
Mine
standard.
against an aggro deck and decided that the only way he could possibly win was by having Ancestral Recall in his deck, knowing full well that he would be conceding before it actually mattered.
That's awesome. I like that. Shahrazad or whatever. Shahrazad. That card is
also
trash.
randomly banned.
Yeah.
When they
In every format now,
when they
except for old school.
separated the formats and different lists and actually let the format grow, and you could see what was good, what was bad, what needed to be banned and reserved, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, Legacy. Just think right now, if the split never happened, everything that happened in Vintage would happen to us. So we wouldn't have
But
Trinisphere,
worse,
we
right?
wouldn't have Chalice,
Brainstorm.
we wouldn't have Brainstorm, we wouldn't have any of that, and the deck would really.
that sounds miserable.
Yeah,
dude.
the format would just be
awful.
watered down and weird. It would
Yeah.
basically be modern.
As a Black-Red Reanimator player, that format sounds awesome.
Enticing.
Dude, fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you.
Thanks, man.
Fuck you and your fucking deck.
You get one Lotus Petal though.
So happy to be here.
It's a,
You'll get one
it's a
Lotus Petal.
step better.
Oh no! Is that,
That card's
that would be
restricted.
banned?
Yeah, but you get one Lotus Petal, but look at all of the at decks in Vintage. Like what's super overpowered? Graveyard deck. So everyone's packing serious graveyard hate.
well, and Narset.
Yeah, now I guess Narset
Narset's
and
stupid.
Arcanist is really fucking big.
Oh yeah, the top 3 decks of the SCG Con Vintage were Narset Control,
Narset
Dreadhorde
on the
Control,
dick.
Narset Control.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So I definitely did write this down, and coming into it right now, like so many cards from the last set have just started taking over. Mm-hmm. and actually figuring
It's
out where he's going
insane.
to play this. Narset's kind of settled into Legacy.
Yep.
I'm still not a true believer in Narset, but I know in Blue Mirrors it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
In addition to that, I know there's this new card. I don't think anyone's heard of it. Dreadhorde Arcanist.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
no
not
one
sure.
knows what that does.
Actually, my roommate Jim, where when I first read the card, I look at it and I go, "That card's absolutely ridiculous." He goes, "Oh yeah, we have a couple. I didn't think it was good because of the attack trigger." And I think a lot of people looked at it and said, "It has to attack. It's not that good." But it comes down on turn 2. It's an
It's a
Ophidian.
1/3 in
It's a
Legacy.
1/3 in
dude.
yeah,
Legacy.
as a 0/3, it makes sense to be
All
a
right, well,
standard card.
So let's jump right into some stuff here. I'm gonna put up. We're gonna. Oh shit. Okay, we're gonna talk about Arcanist here. So
So the definite best part about Arcanist is that you play the card for free on attack.
Yep.
So it doesn't have to connect. It just triggers. The
Yep.
card goes off.
You
yeah,
could
and
suicide this man into casting another card.
it's amazing. So I've been playing Blue Red Delver lately. I've been back on the Delver because of this card. So I've taken a break from Delver for a while, and I've been a Delver player since I started playing Legacy. And this card, when I untap with it, I win the majority of the games because it just does insane things.
Would you say far more than the majority? Because it sounds like 80+% of the time.
I think I probably only lost one game where I untapped with him.
Within is like 20. You've done this a bunch.
Yeah, and I've been testing it a couple different, FNMs and
City champs.
like weeklies and then at the city champs as well. So
it eats a bolt or you win.
dude, it eats a bolt or a swords or something like that. But a lot of times Delver's got the Pierce, or Delver's got the Force or the Daze or whatever. So you protect this motherfucker more than you would protect a Delver or a Pyromancer because of the value that he adds. So
He's more valuable than Young Pyromancer.
he's
in that
more
deck.
valuable than anything else, I think, in the deck right now because of the fact that you can cast stuff from your graveyard. So most of the time, if you got some stuff in your graveyard or you have some stuff in your hand, you can just pretty much you're just casting shit for free. Like you can kill Tarmogoyfs, you can kill Gurmag Anglers because you can kill Knight of the Reliquary because you go bolt, move to attacks, trigger, bolt again. Fuck you. Like
Bolt doing 6
The card gives
in one turn.
The card
For one
I
gives-
hadn't
red.
even thought about. Holy shit.
Brainstorm,
Brainstorm's twice.
brainstorm before
Brainstorm
combat in main
fetch,
phase
brainstorm.
1. Yeah, dude. Or Ponder is still really good.
So
like
this is
everything,
ancestral
everything,
recall
dude.
value at that
yes,
point.
dude.
Yeah.
It's fucking insane.
The card gives Delver, which is a super aggro tempo deck, a mid/late game engine.
Yes.
So it
That's a good point.
lets you put the gas on with your Delver, you put pressure on with your Young Pyromancers, and then a Dreadhorde Arcanist just lets you continually refill your hand.
Yes.
It lets you continually do stuff into that mid game where Delvers are where
Yes.
the wheels traditionally fall off.
Or a top deck fucking Dreadhorde Arcanist a lot of times is better than a top deck True Name or a top deck
Especially Young
Pyromancer.
Pyromancer, yeah, when you're tapped
Yeah,
out.
so it's so good. The only bad part about it is, again, you have to. If it had haste, oh fuck, it would just be overpowered.
Unreal.
But the fact that it's already 1/3 is just crazy for Legacy. So
Speaking about its power, is anyone doing anything cheesy to increase its power in
yeah,
Legacy?
dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you asked. So Haze of fucking Rage.
Oh, yeah.
So Haze of Rage, I've been playing with that card. I'm running one of them in the main. Now it's cute.
I'm
but
sorry, one of in the main of an otherwise serious deck.
Yes. So one of in the main. I have won a couple games off of it.
Can you tell us what Haze of Rage
Yeah,
does?
so
for
Haze of
anyone who
Rage
doesn't know?
costs one colorless and a red, and it gives your creatures +1/+0 until end of turn. It's a sorcery speed with Storm.
That's the important word.
And that's all your creatures?
All your
So
creatures.
every token that you
Every
token, dude.
Everything,
and
dude.
every Delver Secrets and every
It gets better.
Conveniently, it costs 2, and its own effect the first time made sure that this guy...
Yep, Dreadhorde Arcanist will get +1/+0. So, all right, so let's actually read the card for people who don't know what we're talking about. Dreadhorde Arcanist, 1 and a red, trample. Whenever Dreadhorde Arcanist attacks, you may cast target instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost less than or equal to Dreadhorde Arcanist's power from your graveyard without paying its mana cost, period. Next sentence, then this is the important part. If that card would be put into your graveyard this turn, comma, exile it instead. So with Haze of Rage, you can actually cast it, move to combat, get the trigger, cast it again, and buy it back for 2 colorless before it actually gets exiled, which is kind of crazy.
So this is some of that new Jace shenanigans where you flip the baby Jace and you actually get buyback cards back to your hand.
Yes.
Rather than flashback says bye-bye.
Yes. So people are running it as a cutie kind of thing. Someone did really well with it, I think, in Japan at some event, and that's
Yeah, it
kind
was
of where.
Japan.
Yeah. So that's kind of where it's coming from. Most people, though, on MTGO are not running the one of Haze of Rage, and I could see why, because you're just trying to go more streamlined 1 mana drop spells that actually impact the game a little bit more.
I could see it mattering in combo matchups where you actually are racing.
Yeah.
But it's not going to help you in instances where just an active Dread Arcanist is.
But the thing is, with combo matchups, you're already you're gold, right? And then the thing with
Wait, so that deck is already good against combo.
yeah.
So I don't need to ask a question about intuitioning for 3 of this card and then casting a million of them.
Yeah, so
Got it.
Blue-Red Delver is already favored against most combo stuff. Actually, graveyard strategies are the problem that it usually has, it struggles with, but like...
Those don't really matter, right?
It
No
also
one pay
can't
attention
really
to that.
answer 2020s.
Also, don't pay
it can,
attention
no,
to that.
It can, well, between the Wastelands and then like
Vapor
the
Snag
Vapor
and a fast
Snag.
clock.
I mean, if you have to play Vapor Snag, I understand that it is a magic card, but if you're playing Vapor Snag, I think it just shows you have a problem with 2020s.
yeah, it's a one of in the
Curiosity.
deck.
Yes.
Are we going to
Yes.
move over to String of Disappearances, or does the life loss matter?
You mean the life loss on Vapor Snag?
Versus that new card that is essentially Chain Lightning, but for unsummon.
And it's a sorcery?
No, it's an instant. Yeah. It might be on this list. I was wondering. I'm looking at the list
It's
of
not
all
on
the
my
cards
list
to talk
that I wrote
about.
down, but I'll get it out real quick.
Okay.
It is exactly like Chain Lightning, which is 1 red, deal 3, except it's 1 blue, return a creature. They can then pay 2 to bounce something.
Yeah.
Blue.
Oh, blue. I don't think they will ever. I mean, the life loss doesn't matter, but if you're playing against a blue deck, which is increasingly common in this format,
Yeah.
them bouncing and returning one of your creatures.
You really
is
want
not
When
worry
half
about
the
that.
deck, when half the decks out there can bounce your shit, like you don't want to probably play that in Delver.
Fair enough.
Yeah, not
And the 1 damage actually can be relevant. Actually, at the City Champs, I was playing against the Blue-Red Delve. No, I wasn't playing against the Mirror. I was playing against Merfolk. That's what it was. Against Stacy Kaufman. So, yeah, I was playing against her, and the 1 damage actually mattered, and then like I swung for lethal.
Yeah,
strangely
deck's all
enough-
about chip damage. So
Yeah.
yeah, every
And not to
the one
drive the
damage
point
ma-
home, but you get 2.
You get
No
2 of
shit.
them.
I was double casting it
It's
against.
actually
yeah.
2 damage because you're just going to bring it back.
That's
to
fair.
insane.
zero.
Exactly.
I'll bounce 2
Okay,
of the creatures.
this card's really good. What's next?
Okay, so yeah, that card is insane. The next card we're going to talk about here is Dovin's Veto. Now, Dovin's Veto, I think, is going to be probably in those show and tell decks that are now running Narset and Teferi, the blue-white show and tell that people are brewing.
So they're
And
already
maybe
splashing
miracles.
white.
I mean, I think
You're already
this is
splashing white, yes, for the Teferi and stuff.
specifically straight up. This is
All right, you
the
want to read
Miracles
it?
card.
Go ahead and read it.
Dovin's Veto, 1 white, 1 blue. This spell cannot be countered. Counter target non-creature spell. And that's just done. That's just it. There's no need to have a counter war. The spell is countered. And in a deck that has such a clean answer to creatures, in Terminus, Miracles can move away from Spell Pierce, which they do play when they're having
Yeah.
instances with non-creature spells. And they can just move straight into Dovin's Veto, and that show and tell is countered. That ad
Yes.
nauseum is countered. That
And they can't do shit
and you can't do anything about it. Literally just says this spell cannot be countered. Anyone that's played Abrupt Decay
Yeah,
knows
it's just
how
like it.
important that text
The
text
other
is.
really good spot about this, and it's a positive and a negative, but the fact that it costs 1 white, 1 blue makes it so Miracles typically goes blue, white for their first 2 fetches, and then depending on their hand, they either get. Usually it's a second blue, right?
Yeah.
Or Tundra if they're really in a rough spot.
Well, they've
Council's
just
judgment.
they've just
or if they have a
moved back.
white against council. Yeah.
Miracles has just moved back to, and I think they should have never left. But the 3 counterbalances, so they do like going blue at this point, unless
Yes.
they don't have to.
Yes.
So it's blue for counterbalance, then following up with the Narset, which just started seeing play.
Yeah.
So staying in blue is what they want to do, but for something as powerful as Dovin's Veto, I can see them going blue Tundra.
Yes.
You know, instead of
situationally,
moving
I
away
think-
from all the
I
islands.
think, yeah, again, it has certain situations. I think it's a positive. Certain situations, a negative. So I think as a one of, or like you split
Yeah, I think
one
it's,
counter.
I think it's a 2 of.
You think it's a 2 of?
I think it takes the spell pierce spot. Yeah.
Now that sounds
Maybe.
awesome when you're the guy casting specifically Reanimate or
Yeah.
Dark Ritual.
Spell
or-
Pierce is really there for the 2 drops, like that you want to hit as well, though. Like Spell Pierce is usually there for like the 2-3 like hate drop kind of pieces, and so
Or when
maybe
they're curving to Jace.
yeah. So I don't know, but yeah, I'm not a.
So does
big
this replace
Miracles
Counterspell?
player, really.
We'll see.
Completely.
This just became, this spell just started seeing play, and like
Yeah.
a lot of cards from the last set have just started feeling around. When
Yes.
when this set came out, everyone said this is good, this is good, this is good, but we're actually seeing where these cards are good and what situations they're good, what should be played. Like I said, with Narset, I still don't think it's very good. It's everywhere.
Yeah, I'm
No,
running
it's
one in
stupid.
the side of my blue-red Delver.
Meanwhile, this card, Dovin's Veto, you're just talking about winning every counter war, period.
Yes,
There isn't,
and
even,
that's
there isn't even a
As
counter war.
long
It's
as
just
you're
not
the
even a
guy
counter war.
who's countering
Yes.
the counter.
yeah. There's no counter war because it just stops everything. But that's why I think it's probably pretty good in that blue-white show and tell thing that's trying to get out like. So in case you don't know what it is, people are brewing it right now. It's so far it's just trash. It's not anything really worth talking about too much. But it's running blue-white and it's running Teferis and it's running Narsets and they're trying to like people are figuring out do we run like a Chrome Mox for some ramp to
Is
try
this
to get
little
it out
Teferi
earlier.
or
Little
5-drop
Teferi.
Teferi?
Yeah,
Got it.
3-drop Teferi and Narset. And then it wins eventually with show and tell into like Omniscience or Emrakul and stuff like that. But in the beginning of the game, it's trying to get like a really big 2 or 3 drop out, including like chalices on one. Is people are some
Really?
yeah, there's people that are running chalice on one.
I think this is just a bunch of people that are saying miracles are good, show and tell's good. What happens if we push them both together?
Yeah, and
not,
then
not
also
a lot, not
add,
a lot's
like-
come of it
and-
so far.
Yes, and some people are running stompy cards with it too.
Yeah.
The Chrome Mox
and some
ability
people
of this card, when it's not relevant, does strike me as advantageous.
Yeah, being able
You
to
have a blue-white Mox.
Same thing with Teferi,
Yep.
too. Like, if you have 2 Teferis in your opening hand with it and you wanted to Chrome Mox a Teferi, fucking awesome, dude.
Absolutely.
You know?
So that Teferi, the little Teferi, I guess
Yeah.
is what we're going to call her. Doesn't that Teferi also end Counter Wars? Because when that
He does. They
Yes.
cannot do. So
They
yeah, you
cannot do
drop
anything.
him, and then on your next turn, you cast Show and Tell or whatever you want, and they cannot cast spells
Exactly.
on your turn.
Exactly.
I could
So-
see him printing a Dovin's Veto that you know is not going to be relevant to cast that Teferi a turn early,
So the
and then bam.
So the Teferi kind of takes the spot of like what a defense grid or maybe Blood
Besage
Moon
you.
or something like that. Like something that your opponent has to counter but doesn't really want to.
Yeah.
And then you go off the next turn.
A super
know?
duress.
It definitely sounds like the deck with a blue-white show and tell variant could work, but with all the other show and tell omniscience blends, the most streamlined has been the most successful in Legacy. And right now
Correct.
that is
Right.
those just the straight blue-red, put a creature
Yes.
into play and attack. Like even just
Yes.
needing that omniscience, that third card, takes you
That's
into
the slower version. Yeah, it's not as
Exactly.
it takes you into not as consistent just because you're looking
Yeah.
for that other card. And
That's the version that I play, and yes, it runs into problems with consistency, and it's slower.
Now, let me ask you this, because the version that had Omniscience was the best version when you were allowed to play with Dig Through Time. I've heard new Narset be called a slow Dig Through Time. Do you not think that's a possible line?
The thing with Dig Through Time
good
is
point.
that you were straight mono blue, and the card that you wanted to cast pre-combo was also the card you wanted to cast post-combo. Dig Through Time actually let you not run like
A win
the
con,
Cunning
right?
Wish. You didn't
Yeah.
have to run the
Yeah.
win con because you just dug through time, and it let you see 65 cards,
Yeah.
especially when you had the Omniscience out. So you just dug through time to set up your combo, then you dug through time while
To
you were,
win the
while you were
game.
comboing. Yeah,
Yep.
that's why Dig Through
Yep.
Time was so
looking at
powerful.
8 is
Yeah.
far more critical than looking at 4
Was it 8 or
over
was it
2
6?
turns.
I
6?
I think it's
7.
I think it's
Was it
7.
Yeah, looking at
12.
I think it's
Look at 7, take 2.
I think it's look at 7.
Someone
take
here is
2.
drinking beer.
Look at
Yeah.
look at 55 your top 55 cards of your library, knock over your opponent's deck,
Yeah.
and win. Yeah, I think that's what it
and
said.
that's why it was banned. So
and that's why it was banned.
End of story.
Card was really good.
All right, next on the docket here, and this is a favorite of people in the room. This is Blast Zone. So, SB, you want to go and read that for the listeners?
Yes. So Blaststone is a land. Blaststone enters the battlefield with 1 charge counter on it. You can tap it for colorless. You can pay XX and tap it to put a charge counter on Blaststone, to put X charge counters on Blaststone. So you can add multiple at any time if you have the mana. And then you can pay 3 mana and tap and sacrifice Blaststone to destroy each non-land permanent with CMC equal to the number of charge counters on Blaststone.
So that's what Blaststones are. I just want to reiterate here. Why are we talking about old cards again? I thought this was new set review.
Well, I don't think we talked about this on the last podcast, and this is really influential. So, like we were talking about it before the show started, this period of time right now in Legacy is something that I haven't seen before since 2016. We're getting an influx of cards that are just changing the format in real time. Like we can just watch the format and decks absorb these cards.
Wait a second. Are you saying that Wizards doing a good job?
Yes, I think
This is a podcast that other people will hear.
People
right?
will hear you say that.
I think it's really awesome right now. I think Legacy is like absorbing these things. New stuff is coming out of the woodwork. I think it is a really, really awesome time. Like the last shakeup we had was the Git Pro banning, right, and the DRS banning, and then the meta kind of actually became a little bit figured out, solved, stale, whatever you want to call it. Which for Legacy standards, when there's like a bunch of different decks that are all competent and playable, being stale is really not that big of a thing. But yes, so the influx of cards is really the huge deal.
And
I agree.
I completely agree. I think
Yeah.
this is more. I won't necessarily say playable, but this is more cards that demand to be tested than have ever been released at once.
100%.
And look at the design
It's
behind
crazy.
this card. You got to ask yourself, why does it start with 1 counter? And then
Why does it come into play untapped?
You immediately answer that question. If it blew up chalices for free, it would ruin an entire tent pole of archetypes in multiple formats.
As a lands player, it does actually blow up chalices because when you copy it, when you use a Thespian stage to copy Blaststone,
Outstanding.
the copy has 0 counters on it.
That
and you
is
blow
cool.
up chalices. The fact that it starts at 1 is so relevant in Legacy. Most decks' biggest threats, obviously start at
Cost
1.
one.
That's just the power level that we're at.
Yeah.
I mean, how many 1-drop threats can we name that just have to be destroyed? Starting
Yeah.
with, Mother of Runes, Noble Hierarch, Aether Vial, Pithing
Delver,
Needle, Delver of
Grizzlebrand,
Secrets. One of these things.
Oh, I'm
is
sorry,
not
that's
like
a
the
different
other.
card.
Hey,
You
it's
play
Animate
it for
Dead,
1.
2 charge counters, so
2 charge
Right.
counters were good. So
But
just
it even
starting at
kills
1 is so
counterbalance. Like it's insane.
Fucking great.
I've killed more explorations than anyone else. Just to let you guys know that. So it also
I'm sure
kills
it
your
kills
own.
your
Which sounds
yeah.
like it
It kills
stutter
your
step the
own
hell out of the person.
explorations.
Oh, it's you. Got it.
Mine.
But you run one of Blaststone, right? Like you run one of because you can
Blaststone.
crop rotate for it. You can see it with your dredges. So you don't run more than one of it. But
What did it
at the point
replace?
where you're blowing up your own exploration, the board state is probably established already.
It really just changes the way that you play because
Yeah.
you don't run out exploration. You try to get the
You-
second.
you hold
leave
one
it
up
in your hand,
now. Yep.
knowing that you're going to blow the board eventually.
Yeah.
That's something that I've already noticed myself starting to do just because I know in certain matchups you need to use the blast zone.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, you don't need to play 2 lands at a turn.
Yeah.
Once you have, 10, 11 lands.
Exactly. You're able to cast everything you want, and really you just want 1 land. Maybe certain situations you want to like double ghost quarter people or something to try to get their shit, but most of the time that's not really irrelevant.
Yeah. I'm not even on the ghost quarters right now.
Yeah. Some people don't even run it. Yeah. So the Blast Zone is a fucking great card. So we're gonna see it in lands. We're gonna see it in 4-color loam. We're gonna see it in depths. What else do you think is gonna play? Maybe Maverick, or is it kind of too slow for
So
that?
Maverick runs too many 1-drops. You are going to
Too
see
many
it
permanents
in
that
True.
kills.
something that's big
It's
that's
true.
came up in the last couple weeks. Are these Karn the Great Creator decks?
Oh god, I think that's the
Oh,
one
I
mistake.
can't wait.
I think that's the one mistake Wizards made was that card.
No.
It's a one-card combo.
I've
More
played
shit
it a
that
lot.
costs 4.
I have played Karn the Great Creator a lot. I have never seen the resolved Myosynth Lattice. I've played it at least 10 times since the printing. The deck runs a lot of non-basic lands. Those type of decks, the decks that it's being ran in for the most part, are running.
You haven't played Mud though yet, have you?
I have played the Mud deck.
You have?
I've seen the Mud deck. I've seen Anthony Hare's the
Bomberman.
Bomberman versions. So
Yeah.
that card, what's actually really cool, it's almost given a rise to these tier 3 brews that never had any business being played.
No shit.
So a lot of
You
these,
hear that, Anthony Hare?
a lot of the post
No
decks
business.
are now coming back because with 4 mana you have an answer to everything. I don't think the lattice is the important part, but being able to go get I've seen Meek Stone.
Yep.
I've seen
Bridge,
I've
Ballista.
seen Bridge. I've seen Tormod's Crypt. I've
Yeah,
seen
people
Walking
are also
Ballista.
they're also running swords and GTAs and stuff like that. They're grabbing that too.
Well, this is in the most versions I've seen have been like the bigger mana decks.
Yeah.
I have seen the Karn as the top end in like Soul Land aggro, so like a Stompy deck.
Well, the Eldrazi stuff.
Yes,
yeah,
the Eldrazi stuff's
That's where they're
running that.
tutoring out other
But
things.
even something that's trying to play a turn 1 Metalworker and then do something bananas on turn 2 is playing this card.
So
yeah, and you know what? Ugin makes it really good, and that's
Ugin's
where
another one. Ugin's popping up in the post decks.
exactly. So you have your colorless post decks that are the colorless Eldrazi post that are running both Ugin and Karn, and those are running micro synth lattice in the side. I think that's a little bit more threatening than some of the other.
Those decks are going to untap, play Karn, play Lattice in the same turn.
Yeah.
like
Right.
you can't let any deck get to 1,000,000 mana. It really
Right.
doesn't matter
Correct.
what they're going to cast. I really think it's the utility that the card's offering them. I mean,
Correct.
I've even seen,
So it's either a utility for a control piece or it's your win con at the
yes,
same time, which
that's
is
why
fucking
it's so
dope
good.
in that
And
deck.
have you
Yeah.
guys seen? Have you guys had a resolved liquid metal coating on you yet?
No,
right.
What? I don't even know what that is.
What's up?
So liquid
You
metal
wanna
coating
pull that
is a
up?
2 mana artifact.
Okay.
And what you do is you tap it,
Yep.
and target permanent becomes an artifact until end of turn.
Okay.
So what happens is they wish for the
I
liquid
thought it
metal
was
coating.
target non-artifact creature becomes a creature until end of turn where it CMCs.
No, it
its
just
power.
No,
it
not-
just
it's not the
it just
Karn
turns
ability.
it just turns it into an artifact.
Okay.
But what you do is you turn their lands into an artifact, and then you Karn their lands, and
And
you
they
kill the
die.
lands. So that's how
Gotcha.
that's how you're killing control decks. That's how you're killing. You're turning off
Gotcha.
whatever you want.
Specifically, that's the land becomes an artifact, then that permanent becomes a
Yes.
creature with power and toughness equal to its CMC of 0.
So they're wishing, but they're not wishing for the Mycosynth Lattice yet. They're wishing for the liquid metal coating because
Yeah.
they know that you have to counter that. You have to deal with that, or you're going to be a control deck with no lands. And eventually you will kill them with a Mycosynth Lattice, but it's just not going to be a thing.
You made an interesting point that this seems to firm up some far out tier. What we're talking about now is not tier 1 of Legacy, or maybe even tier 2.
This is going to be like, I think the biggest benefit is going to be the Bomberman decks that you're
Yeah.
seeing, but more powerful than the Bomber decks are going to be the Painter Servant decks.
Right.
Because they run the
Yeah.
similar, you haven't seen it yet, but those Painter Servant decks are running Soul Land strategies, but it's not just, you don't have to discard your card to combo.
Yeah.
Because the Salvagers combo, if you guys are not familiar with it, is it's a 4-mana creature. It's a
Yep.
2/4, and then you need 2 mana to activate it. Then you discard your hand with a Lion's Eye Diamond,
Yep.
and then you discard your hand. You generate infinite mana, and you need a 3rd card to win.
Now, we could all just watch Anthony Hare play this on your stream the other weekend.
Yes.
If
You
he
could,
wasn't
yeah.
so sloppy
And you do have
that
to
he
drop
practically
cards
threw his cards
on the
floor.
ground mid combo to help it work better.
Yeah.
But the Painter's combo is
Way
6 mana.
Yeah.
It's a 1 mana artifact, a 2 mana artifact creature, and a 3 mana activation. It's a 6 mana total, so the same cost. You do not have to discard your hand, and it kills them on the spot. So I think when people
Wait, now it has to force them to draw?
It makes them reveal the top 2, and because Painter Servant's in play, all their cards are the same
Sure,
color. so
they're
they
decked
compete.
immediately. Do they get their own upkeep?
Well,
they,
no, it's once you
they
activate
do
it.
get their upkeep, I believe. Or does it kill them? I can't remember.
It
I've
kills
never
them.
actually
They mill their
I
activated it.
think
deck.
Painter says mill your deck. If you have Eldrazi in it, I've got to figure something else out.
Yes,
Yes.
if you have Eldrazi, you have to figure something out. That
And
is
I
true.
might need a bauble that someone was playing that makes you draw a card at the very end of all this.
I mean, even
Maybe, yeah.
it is instant. I believe it's instant speed, so you can just.
But
mill
the
them
Painter
in their
Servant
draw
stuff,
That's also true.
They're also running 4 Pyroblast, 4 Red Elemental Blast in the main. So like,
These new versions are not, and that's what.
well,
it
the
is.
one that just top 8'd was running
Yes.
6 copies, not
This-
8. So there's still, they have just a shit ton of removal. So once they get the Painter Servant out, and it doesn't matter what you have on the board, they're just blowing it up.
So
you
with
know?
the Soul Land base,
So if you do untap
They're
and
dead,
go to
yeah.
draw your card, like it still doesn't matter.
right now you're seeing when it's all because I would say it's all because of Karn. You're seeing the mono red version with the Imperial Recruiters and then lots of Pyroblast, you're seeing a red-white version. I believe it's called like the shortcake version.
Strawberry shortcake.
And that's, I think, the
We
one
watched
that
Espy play that
top
matchup
aided.
and
Yes.
sweat
That
visibly
is
down the back of his neck.
It's enlightened tutors. It's that all that kind of
Yes,
stuff.
yes,
You're
yes.
also seeing blue versions as well with a lot of these new blue Artifacts Matters cards
and Force of Will backup.
and Force of Will backup. So I think Painter is definitely going to be one of the biggest winners for this, especially as people start to figure out what cards are doing and where these random niche tier 3 decks are going to wind up.
Yeah. So let's move on here to a new card.
Speaking
Sorry,
of a card
that blue
cares-
version, that's the Antiquities War version.
Ooh,
If you haven't seen that yet.
No, I don't think
take
I've seen.
60.
It's
The card
I know
from
that there's a blue
Dominaria.
version.
Yeah.
It's a Dominaria Saga card, so
Yeah.
it costs 4, I believe. The first 2 times it ticks off, they reveal the top 5 cards of the library, grab an artifact, and the third is all your artifacts become 5/5s until end of turn.
Old
That's
school
pretty dope.
Tez Ultimate.
pretty dope.
It's the old school Tez Ultimate.
Yeah,
so
it's going to be Tezzerator.
you're
like,
threatening a combo. You
Yeah.
have the Painters, you have the Grindstones, you have all this artifacty stuff going on,
and it could go in Tezzerator too.
and then
And
it
you
kills.
can
And then
also
it kills
just
you
smash 'em.
Yeah.
by attacking for 40.
Yeah, Tezzerator is actually like another tier 3
Yes.
deck that's getting printings
That's
that are
getting
relevant.
harmed. Yeah, getting relevant cards.
Which is, and that's kind of the same situation that Goblins is in. It was a tier 3 deck, like it's a fringe deck.
Goblins,
and now,
I would say, is a meta deck as opposed to a fringe deck. Like if you don't
Maybe.
respect creatures going wide,
I
or
don't think there
a
are as
super-
many rooms these days where Goblins is a tier 1 deck as maybe a couple of
Yeah,
years ago.
I think it's a solid meta deck. It's like
many
Dredge.
years ago.
If you don't respect it, it will come for you. Then
Yeah.
that's what happens to Dredge every couple years. Graveyard Hate gets light, then Dredge comes and wins a huge tournament.
Yeah.
Just like what happened to us. Graveyard Hate got light.
Mm-hmm.
Michael crushed everyone's souls with Blackbird Reanimator.
Yeah.
Play skill.
Lands is in a very similar situation. People start freaking out about other things besides 2020s. Blood Moons go away. And
There you go.
The lands player can get in there. Depths probably appreciates the lack of blood rooms. In
That's
Phoenix
the
right
great
now.
thing about Legacy is it's really diverse, and we're getting more cards that actually kind of make against some tier 3 decks or make
Speaking
some
of
tier 2
lands.
fringe decks even better. So we got Renin 6 here, who's a legendary planeswalker, 1 red, 1 green. And he's
that's
got
it.
he
It
starts off
costs
at
2.
3. Yeah, it's just 2. It's
Infinite-
a 2
That's
mana
kind of
Infinitely
planeswalker.
better than Tillbalt.
+1. Return up to 1 target land from your graveyard to your hand. -1. Renin 6 deals 1 damage to any target, which is pretty fucking relevant. And then -7, you get an emblem with instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard have retrace. So I don't think the emblem is really super viable.
The
but it's-
two-mana Planeswalker.
The emblem is super viable.
Really?
The emblem is incredibly relevant.
Okay, so it's like a win
So
con
you like retrace your
for
abrupt decays and stuff and your crop rotations.
the biggest decks this are going to be played in, it's going to be obviously the Agrolome deck.
Agrolome.
So
and I would think
Agrolome-
lands maybe too.
That's the junkiest
Lands will
ultimate I've
play it,
ever seen in my
but
life.
Agrolome gets Agrolome gets a better version of the ult because now they're recasting for free every turn because the +1 returns lands to its hand. It's a free Abrupt Decay. It's a free Assassin's Trophy. It's
or you
a
get
free,
that free Green Sun Zenith that was countered earlier.
the free Green Sun Zenith, anything like that.
Yeah.
Lands in the other instance, it's a crop rotation every turn.
Yeah.
And it's not just one crop rotation in lands because you have Life from Alome. So you're playing a Life from Alome from your graveyard,
for discarding a land.
getting back 3 lands, then using those lands to cast 3 gambles, using those lands to cast 3 crop rotations, or just it doubles. So
Okay, so
it halves the kill
we're
time
gonna
with
take
Punishing
out
Fire.
of the recording that part where I don't think it's viable because I think it's actually pretty fucking
To
viable.
be fair, a lot of the reviews
infinite-
of this card said the same thing you did.
Infinite
I didn't
crop
I didn't
rotations.
think. I don't think like that. I think like a blue player.
Well, the very designer's article said if it's a 2-mana planeswalker, we can't make the emblem that relevant.
The emblem
because-
is very relevant.
And now we're talking about these examples, and I'm scared shitless.
Yeah. Well, so the only thing about it is, unlike Jace or maybe, it's not even as good. I think as like the Liliana of the
Last
Veil. No, Last Hope is a fucking win con,
Yeah.
and that pretty much ends the game. Veil doesn't necessarily end the
Veil's
game.
I would say
good.
it's probably just
But-
as good.
Yeah, I'm more scared of this ult, given the examples, than having to
I would
sacrifice
say
half of my
it's
permanents.
just as good as
But it's in that
Last Hope.
ballpark.
But like the ult doesn't matter when they +1 and wasteland all of your fucking lands for
Right.
the rest of the game.
Let's not forget that there were two
Oh, yeah, that's
abilities.
true.
Oh yeah, it has
Yeah.
other abilities. We forgot to talk about that.
Which in
Yeah.
a format with Mox Diamond, you're talking about starting that clock on turn 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then every turn you wasteland then while you get your threats out, and then I mean the ult is great.
And then, oh,
but
you're going to play a
usually
mom?
dead by
I'm
the time
going to
you're
neg
ult.
it.
So
oh, you're going to
with-
play a Delver? I'm going to neg it.
With Ren and 6,
Yeah.
it actually has viability in all 3 matchups. So it's going to be the fair matchups, the creature match, the control matchups, the creature matchups, and the combo matchups.
Yeah.
So in control decks, a Miracles player staring down a Ren and 6 has issues.
No shit.
Because you're going to be cycling, you're going to be drawing 2 cards a turn no matter what. You're going to be killing their Snapcaster mages. You're going to
Yep.
be pressuring their planeswalkers with his -1. And if you ult with a Ren and 6 against Miracles, I'm not sure how you don't lose the game against infinite crop rotations, infinite gambles.
Well, I think you would actually probably need Rest in Peace. That's
Rest in
that's
Peace,
like
which
the
is
only
in your
card.
sideboard.
Which
Yeah.
is not being played right now.
No, it's not.
If Rest in Peace is a card, then you just
I think D&T still plays Rest in Peace, but that's about
D&T
it.
still
Yeah.
plays too.
Yeah.
But just look at this against D&T.
This just kills all of D&T stuff.
It kills all of D&T's
Yep.
creatures.
Yep.
It almost negates D&T's land pressuring
Yeah.
because
So you
can't
basically have
wasteland
to
me.
like, if you're playing, D&T, this is a great card against you. So you probably want to like, I don't know, even Rest in Peace like on turn 2 doesn't
I
do
think
shit because you
Vile's-
need to
Vile's
actually.
your best play. 'cause
Oh,
you
for
can Vile's
sure.
for the
This is still
insta and
Council's
kill this
Judgment, I
guy.
guess. I guess you go Rest in Peace, Council's Judgment, or I don't know.
This
There's
still-
It's still 3 dead
Still
men on
in
your
play,
side.
No
it
shit.
kills your Mother of Ruins. It
Yep.
kills you this, and it lets you act. It lets you deal
yeah,
with
it's
the
still a
Rest in
threat
Peace.
even with
If
the
I
Rest
could
in
back
Peace.
up
yeah.
real fast, let's make sure that we caught that. We're picking up lands we're cycling and drawing 2 cards a turn while going up
Yes.
on a planeswalker that costs 2.
Yeah.
So none of this ends at any point. You
It-
literally do this forever.
It gets back your blast zone that just killed your Rest in Peace, but it gets back a blast zone that you blew at 1 to set up.
Sure.
Big thing
Or
about
not to.
Big thing about blast zone is setting it preemptively is very important. So putting it in 3 against the back to basics, putting it
True
in 2
Name.
against
Yeah.
or the true name.
Yeah.
Like pre-setting up blast zone, super important. So let's just say you blow the blast zone at 1, then you bring it back and you set it again at 2, and you're kind of ready to go.
Yeah. So, next card we're going to talk about is Shenanigans. Now, this is a 1 and
graveyard
1
fun.
red. And yeah, this is more graveyard fucking bullshit. So it says it's a sorcery. It says destroy target artifact and it has Dredge 1 on there.
For
so,
1 in a red.
1 in a red, yeah,
critically.
sorcery, and then destroy target artifact is what it reads there. Now, how relevant is this for lands, do you think? I think for Dredge, it's good.
4 lands, so it's not. So 4 lands, it's incredibly relevant because you can
Really?
gamble. You can gamble for it. It doesn't matter if you discard it. You can dredge over it, and you kill every artifact they play for the rest of the game. So just think: no swords, no vials,
Is this a one of?
no It's definitely
when,
one of in the
when
sideboard.
Gamble is a vampiric tutor, you know
In
you've
the,
got a
you think
good
in the
card.
sideboard for
This
lands?
is the one of in the sideboard.
Okay.
Yeah, sideboard.
It's with
Okay.
with lands you can't, and it's just with every other combo deck.
Yeah.
Some matchups you should be as fast as possible. When you're playing Storm and you draw Shenanigans, game 1 you're going to kind of throw your hands up in the air and be like, I need to kill them, not destroy artifacts.
Well, it might have relevancy if they
I doubt they
accidentally
expose the
play out.
LED,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But game 1 they don't expose the LED. Game 2 they do expose the LED because
Right,
Sphere,
you're
going
gonna
to
tax them.
Exactly.
Yes.
And
So that-
then you hit him with the Shenanigans.
yes. If
Which, by the way, the name of the card, fucking
Perfect.
dope.
Right.
Fucking dope.
maybe it's good in some sort of Delver variant.
I don't think so.
Maybe.
I think
A Braid's really also
A Braid
really
is
I
good.
think
really good.
a
It's
braid
also
is
removal,
more.
so-
I think a braid is better, and I also think Shattering Spree is better
Shattering
than
Spree might
Shenanigans
also be
for
better than
Delver,
Shenanigans.
just because you can actually blow up multiple things, and then the braid gets the chalices on one. So
in the Dak Faden deck, you're definitely going to want this as well.
Of
Yes,
course, you're
100%.
throwing them
In
away.
any rug
you
deck.
know what I was thinking? Between Arcanist, Dak Faden, Shenanigans, and like other stuff, you could probably put together like a really solid blue-red control list
Well, I
right
think
now.
if you change that statement, if you take out Arcanist and you put in Ren and 6, I think a rug Ren and 6 Punishing Fire control deck is actually a very real thing.
What if you were playing a
You could do both.
planeswalker that
You
let
could
you
do all.
wish
You
up
could do both
a
of those
permanent
things.
that turned
I think
all
that's
of their
actually the right
permanents
answer.
into artifacts?
Oh, Karn with Karn shenanigans.
Oh my
Karn
god!
liquid metal coating shenanigans. Now we've gone crazy.
You're a bad person, Michael.
And to be fair,
this
when
is going
you
on the
pointed out
internet.
So
that the name of this card was wonderful.
Some
I
trash player.
actually have a really cool interaction with you guys. So we did talk about Heliod's Hall of
Yeah, we
Generosity,
talked about that a little bit. Yep.
earlier. What is the 2 and 1 green enchantment that turns anything into a forest?
Dryads.
No,
Song of the Dryads?
Dryad. Song of the
yes.
Dryads. In my
Good
queue.
job. Good job.
Song of the Dryads lets enchants any permanent and turns it into a forest.
Just enchants one permanent.
one permanent.
Okay.
Enchanted
thing
permanent is a forest. Is
it
all the
doesn't
text.
change super type, which means the super type is not basic.
Right.
Which means if you enchant anything with Song of the Dryads, you can in fact wasteland it.
That's outstanding.
Okay.
So with Heliod's Hall of Generosity,
Wasteland or Planeswalker.
you can wasteland their anything
fuck.
every turn.
That's crazy.
So you wait. So they play a Jace, you turn it into a forest.
Too bad
Eventually,
it's too slow.
it's
like there's
so
gotta, yeah,
slow, but
there-
it's so cool.
If you can ramp into doing that on turn 1 and then starting to like recur it every fucking
that's
turn.
almost a what was the Mangara lock that Death and Taxes used
That
to?
does-
the
it
old
has
school
the
one
same
white
idea-
chick.
It's the
yeah.
same idea.
It's the same idea as what I want to do is build like a blue Stompy list that runs Capsize
Yes.
and buys it back just over and over.
Yeah, that's never taken over a metagame
That's
before.
never done anything. But it definitely is, and that's almost
I'm
main
joking.
deckable. It's a green Vindicate that you can, quote unquote, green Vindicate. It answers any permanent, and it would be reusable.
yeah.
And you destroys things forever. So it would just add inevitability to a deck that already has a lot of inevitability.
Yeah.
So my problem with this card is that it's sorcery speed though.
Shenanigans, of course.
If I could
sorcery.
if I could in step destroy your thing and then dredge
Draw.
this back right away and do it again.
That's
They
another
have
reason
been
why it's
printing
not
better
a-
shatters recently, but this isn't one because it is a sorcery speed.
Yeah, that's why I think why Shattering Spree and Abrade are probably just better, straight
I
better
think so,
in
too.
But if
in
we're
Blue-Red
going
Delver
back
for
to
sure.
if
But this would be great in like a
if this,
rug control.
If this artifacts matter, artifacts still matter continues, and you're seeing people bring back what is it, the Mox Opal, the artifact lands we've seen recently.
Now, what if you did like a hybrid between rug, like a rug lands, rug control list that was running like planeswalkers, but also running Mox Diamonds and also running like Life from the Loam, crop rotation.
This is part
gamble.
of the cool testing that needs
Best
to be
cube
done.
deck I've ever drafted. That's what you'd have.
This is definitely
That sounds so stupid,
all the
but I would
things
love
that
to play.
you're
it.
seeing floating around the internet right now. You're seeing a lot of rug control. You're seeing a lot of weird artifact decks where
I'm seeing a
shenanigans-
lot of weird stuff on the internet on the sites that I visit.
it's
that's not magic related.
That's
Wait a
actually-
second. Yes.
That's
my
actually
oth-
the cool part
that's my
about right
other
now is people that
podcast.
like to brew, people that like to play
Yeah.
weird shit. I
Yeah.
mean, like I said, we've seen the blue-white omniscience deck. We've seen
Yeah.
Bomberman. We've seen Shortcake. We have people
Yeah, no
running
shit,
different
dude.
versions of lands. We have people running different versions of every deck that exists
Fucking
right now.
basically-
Painter's
3 or 4
taken
sets.
down fucking the SCG con, right? Painter won, right?
I think it did.
I don't
I'll
know
have
if
to
it
look it up.
won.
I don't know if it won, but it's top
But
eight.
it's top eight for
And
sure. I
these
think it was-
sets
I
have
think it was
forced
sets are
people
existing.
to experiment, right? They have to try new things because those new things might be strictly better than the old things.
Yeah.
In a bunch of different directions, and we're not used to that.
Yeah.
As someone that plays Gamble, Shenanigans is really good.
Fuck yeah, it is.
Throwing that out there.
All right, so we don't.
Infect one SCG.
We
con.
have. That's what it was.
Ugh.
Oh, that's why I blocked it out.
Painter got third place.
Painter
Painter
got
got third.
third. Okay,
Impact won.
okay. All right. So let's move on to another card here. We have probably enough time to talk about maybe one or two more cards. So anybody got? Just
Hey, right before we transfer off of Shenanigans,
Yeah,
I just
one more
want to
thing.
say if we're soapboxing, A, the card name is delightful. B, the flavor text on that card also delightful.
even better.
yeah, go ahead and read that for the people at
Pricey
home.
baubles are no match for cheap tricks.
That's so
and the
good.
most infuriating thing about Modern Horizons to me, among a bunch of infuriating things, is that obviously someone at Wizards of the Coast remembers how to write fucking flavor text.
Yep.
You look back 15 years, you've got hilarious shit. You've got Shakespeare. You have them writing their own epic poems and sonnets and then quoting them.
Yep.
For the past, 15 years, we've got Jace saying something about how your brain is muddled and Chandra just talking about how fire is hot.
Yeah,
It's
that's
horseshit.
true.
I mean-
That's true.
And I've wondered if maybe it was because it translates better into 50 different languages.
Speaking of good flavor text, I think you guys want to talk about the null rod on the body.
Of course, because
No,
that's
not about it.
hilarious flavor text.
That one's a good one too.
We've always wanted to know what does nothing.
I think we should talk about this guy and then this guy next. What do you guys think?
Sure.
Keep
Okay.
going. We can go faster. We can go faster.
That's true.
We can go a little bit fast. Let's see how many we can squeeze out. So let's talk about the Null Rod guy here. Real quick? He's 1 and a green, and he's
Pronounce his name.
Is
Collector Oif.
Collector Oif.
Oif.
Oif?
I believe it's Oif.
Oi. Inf.
Or Oofy if you just want to get weird.
Ofe.
Ofe.
How about Collector Pahi?
So for this, most importantly, one, it's not an elf, which they specifically do on green cards.
For sure.
Yes.
Two, it is a hate bear, just a straight up bear.
The
One-
hate
one-
bear.
one and a
If it
green
was an
for 2.
elf, it would be,
It would be
so
really
much
good.
better, dude.
Oh god.
For
I
Legacy.
don't know if it was an elf, it would do that much more because it doesn't generate card advantage. But they specifically print cards as not elves, and that's very relevant in this
Yeah.
day and
Right,
age.
Simeon
That's
Spirit
important.
Guide isn't a goblin. Let's
Yes.
be fair.
Yes.
But activated abilities of artifacts can't be activated.
That's huge.
And I don't think this card's super important now, but I think moving forward it'll only get more important.
Well,
I agree
think,
with that.
I think any Green Sun deck runs it, right?
Somewhere in
not
the
four color
75.
loam.
Green Sun decks are super, super tight right now. Some of them are running Mox Diamonds.
No, well, a sideboard card that you side into and you fucking tutor for it. You
Maybe
know?
you're not
if
gonna
they-
proactively
if they
add it.
continually add artifact matter cards, I think
Yes.
it becomes an existence.
Right.
And this is just the baseline of
Yes.
Green Sun Zenith goes and gets this if you're
Well-
doing dumb shit.
This is something I would run in the sideboard of Elves to increase the Storm matchup because
Right.
Yes.
also Elves does lose to Jite. Elves does
By
lose.
a mile.
Yeah. Elves also loses to a lot of the Stompy decks and the Eldrazi decks and stuff like that because they go Chalice and they do something else. So like Tony,
but
or-
Reclamation Sage is still going to be better as of right now.
That's a really good
Because
point.
you actually just
you want
kill the
one
Jit,
artifact
you kill the
dead.
Chalice.
You don't want to turn off
and you,
5.
And you can pick it up.
Sometimes. I think in Storm, it's this card is better. I think against stuff that's running a Jite, I actually think this card is better because
it
they're
kills-
also running
It kills
swords
this
and
one
stuff
and all
too.
of them.
And
Yeah.
the
Exactly.
point of it being a safety valve against further artifact matters cards is very exciting because A, this is a hate bear that
Yeah.
serves as a safety valve, and B, perhaps that might make them more encouraged to make more artifact matters cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The dangerous shit that I like, which eventually I think we'll talk
But yeah,
about.
so
Well, another really big deal for elves is normally you are reacting. Okay, pick it up there. Normally you're reacting to the Jite, right? So you're like, okay, Green Sun Zenith.
well, yeah, that's
for
Reclamation
your
Sage
dude.
is an after the fact
But
salve.
they remove counters and fuck your face,
So
right?
can we do this and talk about the next, the other green card that matters in the set?
Well, the flavor text on
Other
that
way?
card also, its
Oh,
reference
yeah.
to Null Rod being
This card.
fantastic.
This is
Okay,
actually
so
my
let's- yeah.
personal.
Go ahead.
I
Big
believe
deal.
this is the biggest deal of the set. It's Force of Vigor. It is 2 and 2 green. If it is an instant, it has great artwork. If it's not your turn, you may exile a green card from your hand rather than pay this spell's mana cost, and it destroys up to 2 target artifacts and/or enchantments.
The fact that it says enchantments is just
So good.
crazy.
The fact that it
dude.
says 2 is
Yes.
bananas.
It's
two-
It's 2, so you're not losing card advantage.
Exactly.
You're not suffering like you do when you
Exactly.
force of will
and
something.
you can also hard cast it too.
It's
so,
a free thing that costs 4. So
It's-
you go ahead and resolve 2 chalices on your first turn. Get fucked.
Yep. And the decks that are running this card probably can easily hard cast this
Oh yeah.
when the important
Soon.
time. Yeah. So you don't even need to have the other green card because it only costs 4. So it goes probably the decks that are running it might make Maverick, Depths, Elves, possibly lands too maybe.
Yeah.
And 4 mana isn't that big of a
I mean,
deal
this
for
is a
those
must-have
decks.
in lands. It kills Blood
it's
Moon.
so good.
It kills everything
It
you care
kills
about.
Blood Moon
And you
when
don't
they
have-
when
yeah.
they go first. Like
Yeah.
it stops you for it
Right.
counters situations in these super linear the Chalice Blood Moon decks where they go Chalice on 1 and you look at your hand and you don't get to play Magic that game. This stops that from happening. This
Yep.
stops.
I mean, as Legacy players, we're all used to Force of Will because it's been around since we were all in short pants. Is this the green Force of Will? It solves all of the problems that the green decks were worrying about immediately, proactively on their turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super good.
I think this is really good, and the biggest. It also has applications against combo in that game 2 and 3. When you have a sphere out, they play out their Lion's Eye Diamonds in advance for free. You get to kill those.
Yep.
They now
Yep.
can't go Lion's Eye Diamond, Lion's Eye Diamond.
That's huge.
because you're getting one no matter what.
huge.
It's a very big deal.
Yep.
This guy may or may not be a big deal. This is on the screen is Unsettled Mariner. I think it's
This art is so.
it's a changeling. Its text, it is a shapeshifter. The text is, whenever you or a permanent you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, counter that spell or ability unless that controller pays 1. So this is kind of a different version of the Leovold ability.
Or a
Well, it's
tiny
like a
frost
weird
titan.
force spike on
A
everything.
weird
I like
infinite-
the art, but I don't like the flavor text.
the
I mean, he
call
looks
of the
straight from
sea.
Westeros, right?
The call of the sea shapes many souls.
Yeah.
But
Boring.
This is cool. It feels
Yeah.
like once again, I think it's from before all you guys. Do you remember the OG fish decks?
Right.
No.
They
With,
were
like, noble
it was-
hierarchs?
It was Spiketail Hatchling. It was Cloud of
fish.
Fairies. It was Blue White, and they weren't actually merfolk.
Are we talking about land granting up your trop?
No, that was those are the old Grow decks.
Grow.
These were the fish decks that ran a lot of the Dazes, the Force of Wills, and stuff like that. And they just killed you with little creatures. It was always Blue White. They ran Standstill and Aether
Oh,
Vial.
right.
So when we were
Sometimes they were crystalline slivers.
So off the
Sometimes
off
they were.
the off the air, Anthony, you were talking about how you think that hate bears is going to become a thing. Do you think wizards? Do you want to talk about that? What's your
They're
view on it?
I mean, they're obviously pushing these blue-white hate bears that do interesting things. What's the Lavinia?
Lavinia.
Lavinia was 1 or 2 sets ago.
There's the white anti-lands doofus.
Atomic could, in fact, be a blue-white card. If you look at it, it's white. It flies. It's a 2/3 for no reason. It's a legendary, which makes it weird. Unsettled Mariner now, you have another blue-white card. I know there has been talk in the Death and Taxes threads where they want to start adding blue for some of these cards.
Well, it gives you meddling mage too if you do splash. for blue
Meddling
and-
Mage is a very real card. I think it's a different deck. Death and Taxes is very pointed,
Yes.
very good. Shout out to my buddy Finn in South Florida. He's actually the creator of Death and Taxes.
Didn't we say fuck Florida at the
Now,
very
this is
beginning?
Finn is a gentleman and a scholar,
Fuck everyone in Florida except Finn.
except Finn.
There we go.
His lovely wife too. But I played against Death and Taxes when it was being created on a kitchen table, and that deck is very pointed and does very weird things. He would describe it as like a rogue's kit, to where it has a bunch of little tiny effects that it uses to dismantle the other person's deck. This is not a tiny tool.
That's a really good analogy. Yeah.
This is not a tiny tool to dismantle a deck. Like, this is a hammer.
Yeah.
And I think in a certain build, possibly going back to the blue-white fish decks, I think an Unsettled Mariner and whatever they continue to print is very relevant when it's vialed in. It counters Tendrils of Agony, right?
It counters Wasteland.
Just think though how good it goes with Thalia.
And Thalia, I think she still counts just as like the best.
Does
white.
anyone in here
She's-
care
but-
about modern? Because
But
also
those two
fuck you humans.
combined,
Thalia, Unsettled
Thalia
Mariner.
and Unsettled Mariner, holy shit.
I mean, just think
Holy
about
shit.
what they're doing here for stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure how. It's probably very similar where you also want the Stoneforge Mystic to actually win in combat, but it's interesting. I don't think it's to the Death and Taxes of now, but I do think it is
on the menu.
something down the road. It's on the menu.
Yeah. Now, all right, so we're hitting most of the cards that we want to talk about. We're going to throw in 3 Goblin cards at one time. We have Goblin
Now,
Engineer.
these are separate. The other two are not related to Goblin Engineer.
Oh, you're right.
Goblin Engineer, really quick. This goes into feeding the painter decks we've been talking
Yes.
about.
Big time.
And all these random little artifact matters. This feeds the artifact matters. This is their fixed version of
Welder.
Goblin Welder.
So for the people listening out there, Michael Day, you want to read the card for him?
Goblin Engineer, 1 and a red for a 1/2. When Goblin Engineer enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card, put it into your graveyard, then shuffle. Red, tap, sacrifice an artifact. Return target artifact card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So you've got an Entomb, which is outstanding, and then you have a super nerfed version of Welder, which is less exciting.
But a lot of the things they're doing these days, the painter, the pithing needle, the why can't
Yeah,
I-
you're not
the
making Bosch
ensnaring-
with
the
this.
ensnaring bridge.
It hits all
and
of it.
if you're playing this with Welder, Welder doesn't care.
You're right, it's already in the graveyard.
It can tutor for
Yep.
anything if that's what's relevant. But
Yep.
these artifact matters cards are what is the important part. Like Goblin, we might all be worshiping our Lord and Savior Goblin Engineer this time next year.
We
might
should
be.
be specific also, the way this is templated being different from Welder, not an exchange with arcane rules about what's relevant where, what's legal when, but actually a clean sacrifice an artifact, do a thing.
Yes.
Matters.
And it doesn't target your opponent's stuff.
Oh, that
Yes.
also matters.
which does also matter. So you can't set up some weird loop with the aforementioned liquid metal coating. But
or even
the other
SB
goblins,
sweating, never sacking a lotus petal
Never
for fear that
sacking
his
a lotus
pithing
petal.
needle will then disappear.
Yeah, your lotus petal turns into an ensnaring bridge or whatever you want it to be.
Or their ensnaring bridge turns into a lotus petal.
Yes.
So bad for them.
the other goblins, I wish we had the resident goblin masters of Arizona, but
That's okay. They can correct us later.
they can correct us. I'm not exactly sure which of the other goblins are playable.
So I've been playing Goblins a little bit here, and I've been following stuff in the Legacy Goblins Facebook group, which our Arizona Goblins players are pretty active in.
So that's a thing that exists,
It's
first
a thing
of all.
that exists. And yeah, number one, people talk about goblins for some reason. Number two, with Crater Maker and Trash Master and the other stuff that's printed, goblins is starting to return as a really powerful deck. It took a spot in the SCG Con in the top 8 there.
I do
And-
feel like the Crater Maker is the single-handedly dragging
Very
that deck
important.
into relevance.
Yes.
Very
I've noticed
important.
recently
Yes.
it's gone from a 1 of to a
Yes.
3/4 of.
Yes.
The card is dumb.
Yep.
It's a very good card.
And people have stopped running Pile Driver and other stuff, and they're just going super wide now.
Because
with
when they were
goblins.
wide enough that a pile driver was lethal, all the other guys were too.
Yeah, it matters. Yeah, Pile Driver is only good against like True Name stuff, but they're not even.
and also
they don't
True
even
Na-
care
True
about
Name's
that.
not
Oh,
really
the Pro
around,
Blue
and
is
they also
hilarious.
don't care.
Yeah. So the first
Pashalak
goblin
Mons.
is Pashalak Mons, and it's
Great
a
artwork, by
legendary
the way.
goblin.
Read.
This one is pretty dope. Whenever Pashalak Mons or another goblin you control dies, Pashalak Mons deals 1 damage to any target. 3/1 red. Sacrifice a goblin. Create 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens. And this guy by itself is a 2/2 for 2 colorless 1 red.
And he is actually the thunderhead that leads the storm in the storm.
Also, critically, the Mons, whose Goblin Raiders have existed since 1994.
That is
Oh,
true.
yeah, Mons Goblin Raiders.
Oh, I
It's
didn't
an
think of
alpha
that.
card.
This is Mons, yes.
In fact, this legend, along with the Bear legend, pairs nicely with the other 3 colors legendaries, Sarah, Urza, and Yawgmoth, to really get a good throwback in this set.
There you go.
Wow.
Fun
I didn't
facts
see
from
that.
Michael Day,
You're
dude.
welcome.
Bringing the fucking heat. And then the other one, the other goblin card that I think people really care about, and I think they care about this one more than Pashalak Mons. From again, this is my take on what I've read so far in that Facebook group. This is Sling Gang Lieutenant. It's a goblin for 1/1, and it costs 3 and 1 black. When Sling Gang Lieutenant enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens, sacrifice a goblin, target player loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. And flavor text, freshly prompted to First Rock, Zaz was eager to make an impact.
Promoted.
And the art on it is great because it has a goblin launching another goblin.
Slingshot.
The
Yeah, and a
unholy
slingshot. It looks-
union
it's
of
pretty
the
cool.
Lorwyn Black Goblins and everyone's favorite Siege Gang Lieutenant.
There you go.
I mean, before Siege Gang, do you guys
Commander.
Commander, yeah.
the first goblin or the first card that I remember, goblin people throwing goblins. Do you guys remember? Was it Bloodshot Cyclops?
I don't know, man.
Oh, good lord. The 4/4
No,
that
no.
you have to tap to throw something?
Yeah, and the flavor text on that, I believe, after first encounter, the goblins took to calling him Chuck.
That's right.
Oh, that's pretty good.
That was actually
good, too.
one of the first.
That's good.
One of
That's
the first
good.
throwing goblins cards that they printed. I think that was one of my first.
I think
old
Fling,
school-
the actual card Fling, will show you the art
Fling.
of
The Fling
what
is
you're
better.
describing. It is a giant throwing one of the stronghold goblins at supersonic speed.
So while these goblins are good, I think the biggest problems are one, it pushes them further into black.
Right. Yes.
Going back to consistency in the format.
Yes.
I believe if you can get away with running less colors, you should.
Right.
Also, it doesn't necessarily solve the problem of goblins, which is going to be combo matchups.
Well, if you do get black, you get Earwig Squad as well. So this card adds another reason to run black.
Earwig
For
Squad
goblins.
being that raid goblin or the goblin that
It's
lets you
Prowl, I
search their
believe.
library and
It
exile
lets
stuff.
you gestures cap them, yeah.
Got
Yep,
it.
yep,
Is
exactly.
it 4 or only 3 cards?
It's
3.
3 cards.
Okay,
have
so
one
they
too.
back to leaving you with 1 copy of something relevant.
you
if
take
you have
tendrils
to.
and you take the
It's good.
empty
It's
and
good against
Yeah.
Storm, but a lot of the problems that
Another
this-
combo decks, it is good against them too.
It-
Like
but-
it gives them an advantage they don't normally have.
It's good in some matchups, but the reason goblins fell behind the Death and Taxes and the Eldrazi is that they're not running main board blanket combo
Removal.
hate
Oh, no.
removal.
Removal too.
Well, they're running removal, but they're not running the Chalice. They're not running the Thalia.
That's true.
An answer's
That's
a
true.
1 to N answer.
And once you need something blanket like that to let you be able to sideboard. Because when you're sideboarding with goblins, you're kind of picking your poison. Which cards am I going to bring in? What am I going to do? What combo cards am I going to? Because you need different hate to beat SB with Dark Depths. You need a different card to beat me on lands. You need a different
Yeah.
card to beat.
And that's why Mike
Someone on
Hadley,
elves.
his sideboard is a ton of one-ofs when
I
you
was
run
going to
goblins.
say,
ton of
you want
one-ups.
15 singletons.
The deck needs to be able to. It needs that blanket answer, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's I've always thought a Cabal Therapy Goblin would be good.
Yeah, that would be pretty good.
Oh, maybe on 5 we could cast Goblin Bidding.
You could cast Goblin and go for the combo kill, but I think they need something blanket like that before
Yeah.
they become really good into prominence.
Yeah.
They had a great showing at our tournament last week,
They
but I think
did.
that was mostly because people toned down on the sweepers. The deck
Yeah.
is really good at playing through
We
spot
had-
removal. It's really good at playing through 1-for-1s.
I did get
Because-
Sting Scourgered several critical times off the top. My turn 1 was, of course, your hand is no longer relevant and I have a Grizzlebrand go. And that game went to turn 6 or 7 because I had to make that Grizzlebrand twice more just from a top decked 2/2 that happened to unsummon my entire combo.
Yeah, Goblins is running one. It's a 1/1 split on Sting Scourger, and sometimes they're running 2 Sting Scourgers in the side.
In the
because-
top 10 cards of their library.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah. For against you, yeah. They
Got
put
it.
They put it right there.
Yeah, I mean you can't beat the direct Vampiric Tutor every turn.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But to wrap it all up here, there is a lot of awesome cards right now that are being printed in the last couple months, and then of course coming up with this Modern Horizons is adding cards. Not as many cards as the last set, but still adding quite a bit of stuff here. I mean, this last set added so much stuff. We're still catching up on cards that we
Yeah,
missed.
I'm thrilled to be
talking about.
invited to this show because of the topic of these last few sets. It went so wide in so many formats that
Yeah.
there's endless things to talk about.
Yeah, and I really, if Wizards does have to go and ban something in Legacy because people are abusing it, I think that's
Or the
actually,
mulligan.
Yeah, well, I think that's the better spot than being careful about what they print. I think
yeah.
what you do is you print cool stuff, make people happy, you sell your fucking cards, and then clean up the mess afterwards. And it looks like they're going down that route.
It
Someone would
definitely mixes
say
things up.
that Wizards no longer makes any money off of Lion's Eye Diamond, right?
No shit, yeah.
So if they print a bunch of cards that force Lion's Eye Diamond out of a format, which is
They don't
completely
care.
in their discretion, why would they give a shit?
Yeah, they don't.
And do we really care? Sure, there are folks who are going to take a monster hit when their Lion's Eye Diamonds go from, a 4 of being $1,000 to 4 of being a couple hundred. But Wizards sells more cards and then prints more cards and then makes more formats, and we all get 20 more years of enjoyment out of this game.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I own most Legacy playable cards, and I have for a long time. I would not care at all if they abolished the reserve list and started reprinting duels, and we got to play Legacy, forever.
Yeah.
That's definitely my biggest concern with the format is just people getting duels, people getting into it, and not being priced out.
Yeah, as someone who only really plays Legacy and tries to get as many people into Legacy as possible, that is the problem, is the money. So if they abolish the reserve list, I know there's a lot of people that do not want them to do that. I'm one of the people that cares more about just playing because I don't have that much invested. I do have the majority of the format. I think people in this room have quite a bit of cards invested into the format. So, but I think we would all just prefer to play way more Legacy.
Yeah, I am thrilled that no one has called for a lawyer yet because I am definitely off the clock doing this. Mm-hmm. But the reserve list abolishing, and I think it was Dan Bach who did this math a way that actually made some sense even to lawyers.
Okay.
It would have resulted in a valid lawsuit for promissory estoppel, which is you promised us all you wouldn't do a thing. We made money reliance on that promise, and then it went away, so fuck you for that amount of money. Upwards of maybe 1.5 or even 2x the market cap of Hasbro. It was a huge deal and a huge
Wow.
number. I mean, billions with a B.
Yeah, we're never going to see the reserve list
if
abolished.
that's what they're afraid of.
It's not.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be a reserve list. I think it's going to be more and more aggressive printings and more
Yeah.
printings that are relevant.
I think what they're doing with Modern Horizons is it looks like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it looks like they're like trying to legacyify Modern.
Well, there's only one real cycle of cards they need to reprint, and we'll all be honest about that. They reprint one cycle of cards. Legacy is sustainable for the next year.
Agreed. The dual lands.
The dual lands.
Yeah, I think if they figure out a way to just print something that is close and playable, but not the exact same thing.
Well, the worrisome problem is there's another answer to that, and you just ban them. Now we can reprint the shock lands. Legacy goes into a take 3 per duel as opposed to a take 1 per duel format. And we never have to worry about the fact that we weren't allowed to reprint those lands in the first
Or
place.
make an untargetable
And then we go down the road of
that
maybe a
taps
snow
for
duel.
Or they just make snow duels.
colors.
Really good.
Snow duels, yeah.
Snow duels. They can do anything they want.
I think
Does
I
adhere to the
heard
promise of not being functionally identical.
So I think a
yeah, it
legendary
has to be-
fetchable duel would be good because it makes you, that's one less duel you need to buy, so you don't have
Yeah.
to buy 3 Underground Seas. You buy 2 in this legendary duel, and I think it would make it a little easier to get into Legacy. And some
Yeah.
decks only run 1 or 2, right?
But
So
every
you
time
can-
I've heard that mentioned, it was mentioned alongside, we're going to print legendary duels and we are going to ban the non-legendary ones from Legacy. And let's see what that does to the format.
I just think having a legendary
that
option
pisses
that's
everybody
cheaper
off the format.
Right.
You can't do
makes
that.
all decks cheaper across the board.
I
and
think
it
them
adds more
banning them
duels
isn't
into
a
the
problem.
pool.
They're definitely getting more and more aggressive. They've definitely already reprinted more fetchable lands. The fetchable cycle lands are now a thing.
Yeah.
That are-
Well, Null Rod is on the reserve list, and now we have a Null Rod that costs
Creature.
2.
Oh, that's
a
a good
2/2,
point. It's
You know, like
strictly almost better null rod.
exactly.
Dies to
And
bolt though, and
it
Doomblade
does-
not better.
That's true.
Dies to a braid.
That's true, but a lot
They
of
both
times
do.
if you're, playing those matchups, it effectively gets the job done
And it
plus
attacks.
a little bit more because
well, hell, they're clearly willing to push the envelope. We didn't get to discuss it because I think I'm out of luck. But the flashback time twister,
Oh,
which
yeah.
makes Lion's
Oh,
Eye Diamond
God.
the
Oh,
most obvious,
fuck.
ridiculous
We didn't talk about
nonsense
it.
Missed
ever.
that.
Well, because I'm the only one here who wants to talk about degenerate opening 7 only
That's true.
bullshit.
That's true.
But yes,
you're the
I
only
echo-
piece of shit in this
It's
room.
right here.
Exactly.
I don't know what you guys are talking about.
And it
I
is
have-
on
I
Rivera's
have
list.
Bizarre Trade Mage on my list. I have Echo of Aeons on my list.
That's what
But
it
that's
is.
the
Echo
only
of-
one that matters.
Echo of Aeons.
Let's be fair. There is one card in that set that screams, I'm a problem in Legacy.
Yes.
And that's the one.
That is it.
That is a
That is
card.
that is gonna fuck shit up.
We're talking a sorcery for 4 blue that says Time Twister. Then it has flashback for 2 and a blue. Again, it's
Time Twister. It's so good, dude.
So if on turn 1...
Time Twisters aren't as good now
Agreed.
as they were 10 years,
Oh,
20
of course.
years ago.
You don't just want a raw new 7 in your hand. You're looking
It's
for
great with
specific
Narset.
shit.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's great with Narset. Plus, I think that it has.
Let's
the
not forget, you
potential-
discard it to the LED that will then provide the 3
that's
blue
perfect.
to flash
Turn
it
3
back.
Narset,
We got to all talk
play a
about
fucking
this.
LED, crack it, cast
So
this.
I think it has the potential for someone to break it.
Of
I'm not
course.
smart enough to do that, but someone out there is going to be
Take
smart
the
enough.
current Storm deck and wonder how many times it wishes it could force its opponent into mulliganing to a 7-card hand that they didn't have any agency over. Because now
Yeah.
I get to go turn 1 Underground Sea, duress you, take your Force of Will, Lion's Eye Diamond, crack it, discarding my hand for blue, Twister. We're right back where we started, except I'm a deck designed to do what I just did, and you're a guy who now has a 7-card hand that you couldn't mulligan.
But
Yep.
you've also given them their forceful back
That's
or
true.
their anything
Sure.
that they want to
That
do.
is true. And decks that
It is-
can't
it is
survive...
kind of a
addition
gamble.
to that,
Right.
you're also becoming much more reliant on your graveyard, which anyone who's played Storm recently, the reason Storm's so powerful right now is they
Lack
have
of hate.
multiple engines depending on the hate that's going up against them.
Right.
If you're not aggressively attacking their graveyard, they kill you with Past in Flames. If you are aggressively attacking their graveyard, they go the more risky ad nauseum plan or
Right.
the Dark Petition.
I miss Deathrite Shaman.
Exactly.
I do not.
We all miss Deathrite Shaman.
Fuck that fair card.
I love Deathrite.
I wish.
You guys know
let's
I
be
played
honest.
Storm
Deathrite
before I was
Shaman-
being loaned this Black-Red Reanimator list, right? I
Deathrite
love
Shaman, they
those
should
decks.
Honestly, give us a fixed Deathrite Shaman that only gives black-green mana, or a Deathrite Shaman that you have to sacrifice if there's an island in play, and we'll all be happy.
Ooh, that sucks.
No, fuck all that. Give me Deathrite Shaman back. All right, we're going to take a little break, and then we're going to come back and talk to Michael Day about Magic the Gathering. If you've heard of that, we're going to talk about his tournament, how'd that go, and we're also going to yell at him for playing jank, stupid decks.
Redefined limited over the past 15 years is interesting? Because
No,
I'd
it's
love to give
8:42. Okay, and I need to eat dinner. At some
Have
point
you seen
today?
what happens when they print a core set based around cantrips? Because that was the inciting moment before they printed the mechanic Cascade. Now, on the one hand, you have cantrips, which allow everyone's decks to be insanely consistent. It's very hard to miss land drops when all of your cards cycle. They do little things, so there are no bombs that just ruin the game. Do you know what happened at all of the limited tournaments when those cards were in print? All of the pros, it's the fucking line from Rounders, right? Why do the same 24 people make the top 25 of every fucking tournament? Because those cards made it so that the only thing that mattered was your play skill. And if you were insanely good at the game, you won. There was very little variance.
Yeah, because there was consistency with the decks because of all the
Exactly.
cantrips, card drawing, whatever. Yeah,
Exactly.
It removes
It was
the
just
variance.
Pure skill, pure decision making.
Pure skill, exactly. And that was a disaster for the sales of cards. Because no one who's bad, a.k.a. beginning at the game, wants to buy cards that require them to be skilled at it to win.
No, they want bombs and they want cool
Exactly.
stuff.
Big
Flashy.
flashy shit.
Exactly. They want to be able to not play well and still win.
Because they drop their
Exactly.
dragon and they
And-
crush with it.
And that's why
Absolutely.
Turbo Depths is so popular.
I mean, the biggest,
Hey, bad player doing well since 2000 whatever.
the biggest,
go.
what's the word? The biggest
Culprit?
proponent, the biggest percentage of players
Yeah.
is still the casual. Will never play in
Oh,
a real
100%.
tournament.
And that's why
And
Commander
that's
players
Commander players,
support
that's dragons,
yeah.
that's
C-
zombies,
Commander,
that's-
But you know what
standard,
the problem-
draft, the casual people that play those are what support the shops too, and
Absolutely.
support
They
Wizards.
buy packs. We don't buy packs.
Exactly.
But
We
they
buy our
look at,
singles off TCG and that's it. They buy packs and boxes and all that shit.
and they
but they're-
like opening things.
but they're
Yep.
buying sets that they're watching the people who play the best game, I'm making air quotes here,
Yeah.
play. They want to buy the sets that win in the tournaments, and then they want to spin them to their own ends.
Yeah.
I believe in my core that the reason why we saw, what was it, 8th or 9th edition, or maybe one of the M's,
Sure.
had a bunch of cantrips. Everything was very consistent. Immediately
That
followed
was
by,
M11, right? With Ponder and stuff.
I'm really
Or is it
old.
M10? I think it was
I
think it was
M10.
M10.
Yeah,
I
M10.
am way too old.
You
But-
are, yes, yes. If you can't see right now, Michael Day is actually about 76.
At least.
Yeah.
I walked in here on a cane, and
Sitting in
Feldman's
a wheelchair.
cane specifically. There we
Ooh.
go. That's aged
Heyo.
myself. Done.
Bam.
The reason why we saw that, then followed by the cascade mechanic, is the reason I'm complaining about here. Right? There is no mechanic short of miracles, which also makes me want to fucking leave the country.
that was more random.
Than Cascade. You're talking
Yeah.
about a mechanic that will specifically randomly generate an effect, and the only thing you can do to it is build to it. But
Have
then
you-
your deck gets worse.
Have you seen the new Cascade Sliver?
I have, and I think it's fun.
All your slivers have cascade.
and I
Yes.
think that's important
Amazing.
That's
to the
really
crowd
cool.
that you're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
But that's the crowd you're talking about. It's
Right.
the casual kitchen player that wants
Right.
the big flashy
The
stuff.
Pro Tour should not be decided by Bloodbraid Elf cascading into the Anti-Fairies Pyroclasm.
I mean, have you ever seen a game of Hearthstone being played?
oh my god, I can't stand it. I don't play it. It's
Well, it's
awful.
the exact same problem you're
I
talking
know.
about. It's the RNG,
The
and
RNG
you've
is-
seen pros talk about it and pros complain.
That's actually why I don't like vintage, is because how swingy and
Oh, the one-ofs?
yes,
The one-ofs,
yeah,
who
so
drew their Lotus,
That's
who drew their
why I
Ancestral.
like Blue. That's why I like Legacy, is because it has the consistency that vintage does not, and also it has the interaction that modern does not. It has the power that standard
that's a good
does not.
point.
Legacy is the sweet spot.
it is. It really is.
Having
totally
the
is.
interaction
great
that
format.
Modern does not is sort of a very acute observation that I don't think the people who print Modern cards want to hear. Legacy has more interaction than Modern, even though Modern is supposed to be a format for younger players who like to just play a bear on 2 and a Grey Ogre on
Oh,
3
no.
Yeah.
and attack one another.
And that's exactly why modern is so popular, is because
you can do this insane shit.
you're playing, you're doing cool stuff, right? And you don't really have to interact with your opponent that
Right.
much. So what that means, and sorry to all the modern players out there, because this is an offensive statement. That means you can be stupid and have a
Right.
lot of fun with modern. If you're stupid in Legacy,
you lose.
you don't win.
Unless you're
and
playing
that's
Turbo Depths.
why I lose a lot.
There is
Because
Or Reanimator.
there is something that
Because
they're
I'm
doing
really
with modern,
stupid.
and that's what you have to understand. Modern has been created after so many mistakes have been printed.
It's an
They've
artificially
seen
contrived format.
so they are now trying to remake all of their mistakes. And you can see it in this set more than others, where they're directly reprinting mistakes, cards that they shouldn't have
You're
made,
right.
in this set, they re-released a new Mother of Ruins. There's a
Yep.
new Siege King Commander.
Yep.
There's a new
Welder.
Goblin
Yep.
Welder. There's
that are tweaked slightly so they're more palatable for
but
modern.
they're fair. So this is
The thing about chaos is
you'd like to think
fair.
that they were trying to remake the card game correctly. You know, no absolutely broken cards, no Lotus, which should never have printed, no Ancestral Recall, which should have never been printed.
Now, do you think that they will actually succeed in that? Like, let's say 12 months down the road, they've printed a couple more sets and they maybe come out with another modern stuff. Do you think that modern actually gets to a point where it is, it's hard to, like, do you think it's a smarter format?
I think
in
it's a
in
format where
12
people will
12
always
months
push
from
it
now?
to its boundaries.
Of course.
I think that's the way it's built.
Think with the set that
Whereas-
just got printed, the next set, we are sitting here talking about dozens of cards that are potentially legacy playable. So basically or vintage playable.
Right.
You know, the one or two most busted formats. We're talking about dozens of cards that they have made that are playable in legacy and modern. We are talking about dozens of cards that need to be play tested, that needed to be looked at. In and of that self, that shows that they're making great strides in accurately gauging the power level of the game to be where they want it to be.
They understand that if
I
they
agree.
want to make a format that is eternal, so it's never going to lose cards, nothing's going to fall off. the
Nothing's
back of the
reserved
train.
list.
There's no reserved list because again, that variance is fucking
Well,
tilting.
and modern's their cash,
Then-
one
and
of their
modern
cash
is
cows.
cards that they can print
Huge
and
cash
sell,
cow.
as opposed to all secondary market transactions from which they profit nothing.
Or very little.
Then yes, like they're definitely learning. The idea of them understanding the fundamental turn, like the Zvi Mauschwitz 1999 article or what have you, and then defining modern to be this has to be a turn 4 format. And
Yeah.
it can't be turn 3, it can't be turn 2, sure as shit can't be turn 1, means that they're going to print cards that only work on turn 4 or later.
Yes.
And I think the reason why modern is not as fun as Legacy is because of a couple of cards that everyone knows. Legacy is defined by what? Force of will. A
Sure.
huge, important
Brainstorm.
Swords to Plowshares.
Everyone
Wasteland.
knows that they cost either 1 or 0 mana in a
Yes.
in a turn 1 to 2 format. Why is it more fun to play solitaire with the cards in your hand and then have to smash against the cards in your opponent's hand than it is to get to turn 10 with a bunch of grizzly bears attacking into each other?
Because in Legacy, you have to care what the other person's doing.
Exactly.
The interaction.
Modern,
That
you
is
don't.
Exactly
In
it.
modern,
The
you don't have to.
interaction, yes. In modern, you, for lack of a better term, you are jerking off faster than your opponent's jerking off.
Thank you.
And then Legacy, it's like you're jerking off, but they're like slapping your hand every fucking time you try.
But as we go forward, you're getting better and better.
That's a good
you're getting
analogy.
better
That's
and
it.
better
Right.
interaction. I mean, look at our Legacy decks. The vast majority of all of our Legacy decks have been printed recently.
Oh,
the,
yeah.
the most powerful
Lots of
the
new
most
cards.
powerful cards haven't. The Force of Will, the Brainstorm,
The crop rotations.
the crop rotation,
The staples,
The
yeah.
staples,
The
what's
staples
making
are
the decks
always there, but
have
then
always
you're-
been there.
But the
these
chaff is getting
newer
refined.
cards. The reason these cards have been good. I mean, the Reanimator deck that we're going to talk about here in a second, Grizzlebrand.
Yeah, you used to not be able to reanimate shit like that. It had the
What
Sarah
are the other
Avatar
ones?
clause
Chance-
back in 1999.
Chancellor of the Annex.
Yeah.
You can do this a lot better than I am.
Ashen Rider.
Ashen Rider.
Oh, I'd be
Tides
happy
out
to.
Tyrant.
Archetype. Faithless Looting.
Do we want to just segue right clean into it?
Let's go.
I mean, so
All right.
Well, then I think the idea behind modern versus legacy, if I could just capstone that, is the interaction in legacy is so much greater than in modern, and that is so contrary to the philosophy of the format. We're talking about modern cards printed in the modern era where interaction is king. We're supposed to have grizzly bears smashing into each other and combat tricks being a legitimate thing, and yet modern is defined by how well I can do my monolithic linear thing against your monolithic linear thing and pray that you didn't sideboard properly when you built it. Not when you sideboarded, but when you built your sideboard.
See, I think they're the format they're shooting for. I don't know if you guys played in this, but you should, Michael. Do you remember Old Extended?
Yes, and that
That was
format
the-
defined the world.
That was the textbook. I imagine most people would say perfect format.
That was one of the best
That's where
formats ever.
Alurin existed.
So you
Yep.
think that's where they're shooting
I
for
think
with their
that's
latest
goal.
printings? Okay.
I think that's what they
Okay.
want.
And
Well, I
They
mean, look at it. The majority of the GPs that are constructed this year are all modern.
Yep.
Standard is taking a back seat, And it's interesting
Legacy
too because
has too.
Legacy's always been in the
Modern is
backseat.
cool as shit to watch.
Yeah,
Let's be fair.
but here's the thing: like a few years ago, do you guys remember when Wizards was like, "We're not going to do any more modern Pro Tours. It's all going to be standard." Huge backlash. They really tried to push standard because it sells new cards, right? But modern is such a strong format. It's such a popular format that they can't just ignore it, right? So modern is a position where they have to support it. They have to build around it. And I think making sets that are modern legal and not standard legal is a smart move, right?
For sure. And in an effort to give more interaction to the format, again, we spent the first half of this conversation giving them credit. The free spells, the one we didn't get to talk about, of course, being the closest to Force of Will that anybody is going to get in Modern, I guess.
Force of
matters.
negation.
The
Yeah.
force negation.
Oh, we did talk about, the free negate means something.
Yeah.
Because I wonder now if cards like, Rivera and I were bitching about Blazing Shoal is on the ban list of Modern. Why? Not because that card is insane, but because if you play a turn 1 Glistener Elf, your opponent is probably dead on the second turn.
The interesting part about the new force is that it stops your opponent from comboing off. It does
Exactly.
not help you combo off.
Exactly.
That's important for modern.
That's why it's
specifically.
not playable in Legacy because
Right.
you can't use
Exactly.
it to protect your bombs.
Right.
But in Modern, you could bring it in to stop the combo deck from doing things.
Right.
And
It is-
speaking of combo decks here, we're gonna actually we're gonna start before we just fucking talk for hours. We're gonna actually talk about the city champs here. So with us today, I'm gonna give a little introduction here. Mr. Michael Day has been playing Magic, if you can't tell, for a very long time. He's a smart man. Don't know why he picked Black Red Reanimator. We're gonna get to the bottom of that right now. Now, I don't know you super well, but every time that I've seen you over the last year or so, you've been playing Black Red Reanimator.
Sure.
Now, I can tell that you're not an idiot, right?
That's good.
So, why Black Red Reanimator? With your extensive history of Magic,
Sure.
why Black Red?
So I actually anticipated that question specifically.
Perfect.
Because, of course, the deck is
Well, I've been giving you shit for a year,
absolutely.
so hopefully.
I used to play Storm a lot.
Okay.
I thought it was a great deck, and
Okay.
I had the cards. I mean, I still have a bunch of the cards. The reason why I stopped is because I loved the sub game, which was the Cabal Therapy game. So the turn 1 free Gitaxian Probe becomes my triple therapy ruins your hand, and I top deck better than you because I'm a Storm deck. That was
Yeah.
a great game that you didn't get to play anymore when
Yeah.
they banned Probe.
Yeah,
So-
I loved that too. I was playing Grixis Delver. Same
There
idea.
you go.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. You knew what their game plan
so
was.
good, dude.
All of your counter spells just so happened to line up with all of the important shit they were going to do. And when you lost that free peak, everything changed. I turned to Black Red Reanimator almost entirely because of a guy sitting in this room, Daniel Espinoza. He owned that entire deck, and don't get me wrong, it wasn't because it was easy or free to borrow. It was because it did insanely powerful things in a format where I would rather be the guy asking you, can you deal with this, than be the guy asking myself, can I fix this?
Yeah. So, do you always kind of lean towards combo when you play Magic? Is that kind of the sweet spots for you, or do you just prefer that in Legacy, where it's such a wide open format that maybe playing combo is a little bit more fun and less taxing than playing a control deck?
The funny thing about the way you asked that question is that both of those answers are true.
Okay.
In Legacy specifically, I don't need to know 16,000 individual cards. I don't need to know the interactions between almost every card in the format. If it costs more than 3, Black Red Reanimator does not care about it.
Yeah.
Force of Will accepted.
Yeah.
So not having to keep a very accurate thumb on the pulse of the format is helpful. I love being the guy, again, doing the most powerful thing and fully accepting that the price I pay for not having to know the format, a.k.a. playing a Force of Will Brainstorm deck, is that I will have draws that just lose. I beat myself. I draw 4 Grizzlebrands in a row with no mana.
And that's combo,
Right.
It's yeah.
Right. I mean, but the other half of your question was you asked about playing combo generally, and I do like that appeal of the game. Some of the most success I've had at the game was playing Ravager Affinity. I thought I was extremely good with that deck, and I think my results may have proved it. I qualified for a couple of Pro Tours with it. I even
Beautiful.
tried to play it at Pro Tour LA, and lost to frankly, the fact that I couldn't stand up to 7 rounds of pro level play
Yes.
in a row.
That's difficult.
It is.
It's why I don't even play Miracles a lot of times at F&M is like that.
Yes.
Like
You think through 4 times as many
yes.
turns as everybody
taxing,
else.
and that's-
all those ticks cost, calories and attention.
yeah.
So,
So when you show up to an Arizona event with Black Red Reanimator, you're not playing against the same level of people. So generally, do you just find it's a great time for you then?
I
Like, just-
wouldn't even say that it's the same level of people as a pro tour or not. I play against plenty of people who know exactly what I'm trying to do and know exactly what they want to do against it. It's just, can I get lucky from time to time with the edges that are generated by knowing what to guess with Cabal Therapy? Having
Yeah.
played the game for
well, you know your
majority
hate
of my life.
pieces, right? So
right.
game 1, it's counter magic or whatever. Game 2, then it's okay. What are the 3 hate pieces that this deck brings in?
Right.
Yeah.
And you don't need to know the weird shit, like the fact that perhaps the Miracles player has brought in Dovin's Veto against me, because
Sure.
I honestly do have an issue with that card. If my first Reanimate gets countered with Force of Will, they may have some bizarre shit that, like, I'm not going to name with the therapy
Yes.
in the blind.
Well, that's legacy though.
Exactly. I like the fact that this deck lets me do the aggressive thing to the maximum. I mean, the fact
Okay.
that it's not playing blue cards. It doesn't have Brainstorm. It could be playing Careful Study, but instead it plays Faithless Looting.
Yes.
It could be playing Force of Will, but instead it plays Chancellor of the Annex.
Yeah, I think Black Red is in a much better spot than Black Blue Reanimator.
Even though the black-blue deck is going to have access to a ton of edge-gaining cards.
But being 1 to 2 turns faster,
Precisely.
that's the key part that makes Black Red Reanimator superior in my
The whole
eyes.
reason the Black Red version was created in the first place was so the Reanimator player could get under a Deathrite Shaman.
Yes.
So
There we go.
when Deathrite Shaman, our Lord and Savior, was banned, a lot of people expected the blue-black versions to see more resurgence, because then now you're more versatile. You get to run better cards. You get to run the Ponder. You get to run the Brainstorm, and that never actually happened.
But you don't need it.
The deck
Yeah.
the deck kind of, I don't want to say went away, but it is less popular after the Deathrite Shaman ban, which I always thought was weird, in that now there's somehow 3 versions of Reanimator when there really shouldn't be. There's going to be the blue-black version, there's the mono-black version,
Yes.
and then there is now the red-black version.
Which is, I think, the best version of the deck. But remember, when Deathrite Shaman got banned, people anticipated graveyard decks going haywire, right? So that's why I think we saw a downtick in graveyard strategies, is
Right.
because people were actually expecting people to go really hard into the graveyard stuff. So a lot of the control decks were then running a bunch of graveyard hate. And
Yeah, I
then-
can't play Deathrite Shaman,
that was
so
a couple
therefore I'm going to
months.
sideboard 4 Leyline of the Void.
So
Yeah,
I
exactly.
do have a question for Michael, and I obviously do not support your deck decision at all.
No one in this
Nor
room does,
can
no.
I ever, sleeve something like that myself,
Yeah,
just
there's an
due to
upside-down
play
pentagram.
style. But how do you feel about a format like Legacy and a format, in Modern? But how do you feel about a format having those boogeymen? We were having a conversation earlier, especially with the most recent event we just had, where there were goblins and elves players in our top 8, because our sideboards were lax on board sweepers. So you get to win the tournament because our sideboards were lax on graveyard hate. But how do you feel about boogeymen existing in formats just across Magic?
So across the history of the game, I actually appreciate them. I don't necessarily think they should be tier 1, or at least tier 1 as we would define it across a format.
Sure.
So for definition, for anyone at home, a boogeyman is going to be one of those decks. It's not a tier 1 deck. It's
Right.
going to be classified as a meta deck.
Fringe.
A fringe meta deck, but the power level is just so ridiculously high.
Yeah.
The original one of the boogeyman decks I would think
Glass
of is going to
Cannon.
be Dredge.
Yeah.
Original Dredge.
Oh, you mean the weekend after that deck was debuted in a weird Grand Prix? I absolutely built 100% of it, including the turn 2 Psychotogs, and destroyed a PTQ in Chicago, Illinois.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect.
I do like them. I mean, I understand what you mean by a boogeyman, meaning a deck that is not a consistent tier 1 player. However, as we understand tiers, let's think about it this way. Any given Sunday, to fucking cop a phrase,
Sure.
that deck is tier 1. I mean, I was probably playing on the only tier S at that tournament 2 weeks ago. I'm not so sure if any of the other Reanimator players felt that same way, but I kept running up against hate that was very beatable. And if they had 8 or 9 cards that were there for dredge and just so happened to work against me, I would have gone home 0-2.
Yeah.
The 0-2 cast.
Yeah.
And
Or two
we
Dropcast.
did watch you in the finals. The opponent mull to 1,
One.
knowing that he only had that one way to interact with you.
Now, I like to think that perhaps my very friendly banter may have made it easier to keep doing that, but I don't think that's true at all.
Ooh.
My opponent in the
Got in
finals
his
knew-
head,
my-
huh?
My opponent in the finals knew exactly what he was doing. He was a sharp player. I know, having listened to the commentary of some of his previous matches, that I think the camera got in his head. But certainly against me, he knew exactly what the target was. He knew
Yeah.
what the bullseye looked like, and he absolutely shot for it.
Yeah. As an
Not-
Elves player, I think he played it very well too. Yeah.
So here's why I like the Boogeymen deck and why I like playing them. That exact game 3 right there is the perfect example. I kept a hand that had no lands but a Lotus Petal, and then either the Wear Tear, which I can cast white against 1 Leyline. If he starts with 2, I'm fucked.
Yep.
Or I could cast the 1 Faithless Looting in it. I get to keep that hand with a fairly reasonable confidence that I will draw into a land
Yeah.
if he doesn't play a Leyline. And if he does, my deck doesn't do anything, so the fact that I can wear Tear it means the game starts over.
Yeah.
I get to keep a hand that has that kind of
That's a
threat
great
to it.
hand in a sideboard game.
Meanwhile, he knows that he cannot possibly kill me fast enough if I kept a regular hand that my deck can draw. So he has to mulligan to a specific card or combination of cards. The fact that his first hand, if you look at the replay, was a very playable, I think it was like a turn 4 natural order, I'm dead, no Leyline hand, meant that he had to mulligan.
Yeah.
So
Because of
I'm-
the threat of the boogeyman.
Precisely. So I'm the guy in the position of being able to keep a hand that is unknown to my opponent. But my opponent knows what my deck can do. And the fact that what my deck can do is so many tiers above what other decks can do means that they then respond to that information.
You have to respect it, man. You
Right.
have to respect it. And that's why I think if you're running a deck, number one, Elves is always going to have a weak spot for
Yeah, and
graveyard strategies.
And I love the Elves deck, by the way. I think it's a fun deck. I
Same.
love that it exists.
Same. But yes, I don't think he misplayed that at all. But you had the upper hand for sure going into that, not only because you have the favorable matchup,
Sure.
and he has a very unfavorable matchup, but the way that he decides to handle the graveyard.
Was it you that pointed out that Elves boarding Leyline of the Void is probably not a winning proposition because even with 4x Leyline of uncastable in your sideboard, you're still fucked most of the time. You turn a 20-80 matchup into a 22-78 matchup.
Exactly.
I know a lot of people that just don't board and they keep the
Yes.
surgicals because
Yep.
surgical pulls double duty against like miracles.
Right.
I'm in that
But you
camp.
don't run the ley lines.
I've tested it both ways. I have run the ley lines in that build. I think that the matchup is very poor. I
Right.
think it's about 80-20, yeah, if I was gonna guess. But I would prefer to have those 4 slots for stuff that is multi-purpose, that doesn't corner me into a spot where I have to mull. Now, so for your tournament report, let's get into that a little bit here. So
Sure.
you pretty much just stomped your opponents all rounds, if I remember correctly. You just kind of went undefeated through there, right?
So I did have a question that was very important and definitely more so than I kept these cards and I won all my die rolls. But what would you say was like the single most important play decision you had to make in the tournament?
Well, of those 2 questions, the first one is more fun. Yes, I was damn near undefeated all day. Second,
Which is
and
beautiful.
much more relevant to the legacy format and people who want to play it, is what was an important decision out of the Black-Red Reanimator player's head. I think that some difficult decisions I made on that day were keeping hands that only played a Lotus Petal into a Faithless Looting.
Okay.
I took a lesson out of God forbid, the modern format, which is that any hand that can cast Faithless Looting is a keepable hand. I mean, it is essentially Ancestral Recall in that deck.
Now, Anthony was casting here for the day, and there was a difficult decision surrounding Pithing Needle, if I remember correctly.
Well, of course, I'll bring it up. I luckily was faster to object than SB was to insist. In a situation involving Pithing Needle and the only possible land I had, or fetchable land that I had in play, which was a Bloodstained Mire, I suspect that anybody who is playing a Pithing Needle against the Black-Red Reanimator deck on any number of cards with any amount of information is wrong naming anything other than Grizzlebrand.
I will object there and say you mulled to 5, so I assumed you were pretty low on land. So if I
Right.
can cut off your mana, I think that's the way to go. So when you said I was ready to name it, but I allowed the takesies backsies. But
You also-
I did win that game, so it didn't matter either way.
And you did know my hand. I had been duressed on turn 1.
Yeah, and I think that was his only land. So,
Gotcha. Okay.
but I mean,
that doesn't seem like a horrible play.
I think
cutting it off-
I think his finals mulligan might have been one of his most controversial keeps, right?
You're right. I mean,
Okay, so
for
what was
sure.
that one?
Well, thinking about it, having now, the benefit of hindsight, I kept a hand that played the classic turn 1 double or even triple therapy if I really just wanted to ruin my opponent's playable cards against an opponent who was going to be mulliganing to a Leyline of the Void. And I don't think I honestly appreciated the fact that Leyline of the Void, being a pre-game action and a permanent that's hard, nay, impossible for Black-Red to deal with, literally blanks 40-some cards in my deck.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Cabal therapy does nothing if they have a ley line. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
exactly.
Exactly. So that decision, which was one of the most important on the day, was the wrong one. I mean, I kept a 7-card hand, I think, that unmasked, duressed, or unmasked, and then therapied my opponent with the potential of doing it again in a post-board game where my opponent is going to predictably start with a Leyline of the Void.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but you did not know for sure that the ley lines were in his sideboard, right?
Oh, I
You had-
did.
Oh,
I think he openly told him that he runs
openly
4.
told, or maybe you saw it or
Again,
something.
like I said,
so
I-
you had the knowledge and you still made the wrong choice there. So
Right.
that's probably that sounds like a misplay if I've ever heard it.
For sure.
And so those are tough decisions that Black Red actually has to deal with, and that's the thing. It is a glass cannon, but because it is a glass cannon, small decisions like that
have
may seem
outsized
small. Yeah, they may seem small for like maybe a blue deck like Show and Tell that can maybe recoup from it a little bit better, but you lost that game, right?
Big time.
Yeah. So then you went to game 3 with Elves and then ended up stomping them though.
Well, and he mulliganed to 0, or 1 rather, looking for a ley line.
Yeah.
Again, as we may have talked about in the past, if he finds a ley line with no other cards in his hand, he still bricks 80% of my deck.
Yeah.
And I absolutely have to have a way to kill that thing before I also get to play a game of Magic.
Yeah.
And Michael definitely snap kept the hand with Lotus Petal, Wear Tear.
Yes.
Yes.
Lotus Petal, Wear Tear, Faithless Looting.
On
That's
game,
right.
Yeah.
on
Oh, so
game
you got to
3,
keep
yeah.
that. If you take a page from the modern book, you
That's
keep
correct.
that.
So
Yeah.
as much as we have been trashing your deck choices or your deck choice and the play lines, the vast majority of skill with the red black reanimator deck is going to be in between games and which hands to keep.
Yeah.
And that's a skill
Yes.
that
Yes.
I definitely feel is underdeveloped in our community and in Magic as a whole, like how to mulligan, how to keep, when you should dig for hate, when you shouldn't.
Yes.
Would you recommend a deck like Red Black Reanimator to people that need to develop that mulliganing skill and that sideboarding skill?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I would say that deck plays really well to 2 tails of the bell curve. The people who don't know a goddamn thing and the people who know a lot about the format. And the reason why is because
would
the
agree,
people
yeah.
who don't know a fucking thing can just mulligan to a hand that does the turn 1 Grizzlebrand thing
Yep.
and not know anything about what could be against them. And what is the probability of having Force of Will plus a blue card in your hand? 47%?
Yeah.
I mean, everyone knows that number.
That's how I play.
Everyone
Show and Tell.
knows that number.
So
Duh.
the idea there is you just get to do it 53% of the time
Yep.
if you assume the format is exclusively your deck and Force of Will decks.
Yep.
On the other half of the time, if you are in the upper tail where you are actually aware of what could be done against you, you get to play a lot of probability games. I almost feel like it plays similar to Ravager Affinity from 15 years ago when that was the scourge of the company Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah.
You needed a fucking master's in mathematics to be able to play that format.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, the idea there is you're keeping hands or mulliganing hands or playing lines based on probability. You know exactly how many versions of a card you have in your deck. I have 12 copies of a way to reanimate a Griselbrand. I have 4 Griselbrands. I have 4 Chancellors of the Annex, right? I have, N options and so many different ways they connect. And I can do that math, at least for the first couple of turns, relatively efficiently.
So do you think for a new player or somebody that, like Anthony was saying, that maybe doesn't have the skill set of playing Years in Legacy and doesn't know, the intricacies of mulliganing, do you think Black Red Reanimator, since it does appeal to people that don't have the format knowledge but need it, like Anthony was saying, do you think that is a good deck for them to play and learn then?
No.
Okay, so
Not even a little bit. I think that if you're trying to get into Legacy and you're trying to learn how the Legacy format works, you play a Brainstorm deck.
Okay.
I mean, I think you have to because you get to see a lot of cards. You are not going to presumably win extremely quickly, and you are going to see what your opponent's decks can do a lot more often.
Okay. I would disagree. Oh,
I agree. I think I
agree because you're playing a slower deck and not a combo deck, and you get to see more of the cards. I think yes, you might be onto something.
You learn
there.
more of the format by doing that.
Yeah.
My point with it being, if once someone can initiate and execute the combo of reanimating a big creature, then they only get to see what stops them from winning. So
Right.
Exactly. So you don't see
new player knows this card A plus B equals C.
Yep.
What D or what card D stops that from happening,
Yeah.
then they can learn the interaction that way. That would be my only point and the point of the question.
Well, hearkening back to why you'd play the deck in the first place, if you only wanted to learn 10 or 15 relevant Legacy cards, you then absolutely play a Glass Cannon because
Yeah.
you don't need to figure out what happens on turn 11 ever. That if you have seen turn 11, you should have conceded 4 turns ago.
Yeah.
Because that's the turn when you could have hard-cast Griselbrand and you didn't.
exactly.
So it could be a great way to start playing Legacy if you're kind of the elitist or the min-maxer,
Yeah.
but not if you want to understand the whole format.
Precisely. I think if you got airdropped in the middle of a tournament where you had paid a lot and your deck was just assigned and you didn't know the format, you absolutely pick something like Black Red Reanimator
Yeah.
because you could just nut draw 7 times in a row and suddenly you've recouped your investment.
Yeah.
If your goal is to acquire cards and play Legacy and join the Legacy format, then no, I don't think that's a great deck choice
Yeah.
because, again, you learn the 12 cards that stop A plus B equals C, and you learn A, B, and C, and then that's it.
And that's it. Yeah, you hit a wall eventually. Yeah, I was always recommending that and Blue Red Delver to new players, just because they're fairly affordable decks.
Sure.
They only run a couple duels. But after hearing your explanation there, maybe Blue Red Delver because it plays Brainstorm, games go longer, there's more interactions. That might be a better deck for new people.
I mean, I
than
think
Black
so.
Red.
I don't want to downplay the edge to be gained by being able to do the math and play the odds when
Yeah.
you are playing a deck where, every card is so wildly different from the other. There's no such thing as a cantrip and you have exactly 4 Faithless Lootings.
Yeah.
You're playing odds that don't have a gray area.
Yes.
Brainstorm could be any 3 cards, so you
Yep.
have to spread the odds across 3 cards, right? But Entomb gets 1.
Yes. So it's way more narrow.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I think that if you aren't willing to do that math or you can't, then you are taking that deck knowing that you're flipping coins against your opponent.
Fair enough. So you went pretty much, again, undefeated all day, which is a huge, actually, accomplishment, right? You didn't lose a single round. You drew into the top 8,
That's
right?
true.
Yeah, so you drew into the top 8, didn't lose a single round. That's a pretty big deal. Now, if you were going to play in another Legacy event,
Say a 16-man invitational.
and say a 16-man invitational, and they took away Black Red Reanimator as a choice, what would you bring? Storm?
Almost certainly.
Okay.
I mean, again, I think that in a format with the power level as high as Legacy, you like to be the person asking the hardest questions. Did you mulligan to a hand that can deal with what I'm doing?
Yeah.
I think the Dave Price lesson from 1997, there are no wrong threats, there are only wrong answers, applies to life. And when you apply that to a format like Legacy, you get very obvious answers. Yes, if you know how to answer questions better than the other people playing with you, you should be the guy playing Force of Wills and Brainstorms and Fetchlands.
Yeah.
No, if you do not know the format better than the people that are playing you, but you can memorize or at the very least calculate your own odds, then you should be playing a deck that has odds and redraws like
Yeah.
Black Red Reanimator or Storm.
Well, there was a wise gentleman once said to play to your strengths here. That was on this last episode, episode 9. Mike Hadley, he said the exact same thing that you just said. And he's a great player as well. So, there probably is some truth in that, at least in the Legacy format. Now, to wrap this up, I got a tough question here for you.
Great.
What does magic mean to you?
Across the course of my entire life,
What does magic mean to you? Yeah, this is
aside from
you
the
got a
masturbation
microphone
occurring to the left of me.
Yes. Aside from Anthony Rivera stroking his penis right now, what does magic mean to you?
well, it has meant an awful lot, and I think the reason why is because it informs a certain way of thinking. I mean, we've kind of touched on it on this entire conversation here. First of all, in life, I think you'd rather be the one asking the questions than answering them, because to answer questions requires more knowledge than to ask them. At its worst, that's the classic Einstein's problems are at a magnitude of intelligence lower than solutions, right?
Yes.
It is much easier to break a thing than it is to build a thing.
Yes.
That is a sort of philosophy that has informed my life. Another is, logical consistency, being able to if-then your way from a very small starting point to a very important conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
I love games generally, and I love the way that game theory has, evolved to define the way that we think about them. Magic specifically, for me, was a fun way to interact with my other smart friends when I was young. Then it was a way for me to explore the country and the world when I was in college.
Yeah.
At the expense of college very frequently.
Yeah.
And then I suppose the third phase was after the rest of my life was in place, so I wasn't missing major opportunities at the expense of the game.
Yeah.
To have fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Legacy because it's a cutthroat format where you can do broken-ass shit, but I also don't mind shaking my opponent's hand after they have cast 3 Blood Moons on the first turn.
Sure.
I think that that's fair, right? I didn't feel that way 15 years ago. I would have thought that was bullshit, and I lost some sort of...
When you maybe had more of a competitive edge or something
Precisely.
like that, yeah.
I mean,
so your view of what the game means to you kind of has changed over the course of your life. I'm sure it does for a lot of people there.
So this is a fact check. What combination of cards enable you to cast 3 Blood Moons on the first turn of the game?
Well,
Did
game
I-
1,
did
game
I
2,
say
and game
3
3.
Blood Moons?
I think he was just...
What
Hold on.
I think he was just-
What combination of
It's
cards?
obviously a number of seething songs. Let's see
It's
here.
definitely a number of seething songs.
We need 3 Blood Moons. We need 2 seething songs.
A mountain and a Simian Spirit Guide.
No, we
No,
need
you
a
need a-
mountain. We need
you know-
No, you
obviously
needed Soul Land.
Soul
Tomb,
Land.
Yeah,
and a Simian Spirit Guide. Okay, I was just making sure it was possible.
I mean, I rarely say things that are impossible. It's just that did stretch credulity. To me.
Yeah, that's 8 cards, so you'd have to be on the draw.
on
on the draw. On the
8
draw.
card only.
Yeah.
Yes.
that's 3.
It's 8 cards. 3
Well
Blood
then.
Moons, 3
Yeah,
songs.
yeah. I assumed
it's
you were
only- it's
just
only 2
talking in
songs. It's only 2
superlatives.
songs.
I was.
yeah.
Yeah.
The idea there is, I have grown up, and I think it's been fun having the game in my life because it has informed the way that I've grown up.
Yeah.
I also know that now, if I want to have fun with the game, I play my cube,
Mm-hmm.
I play with friends, I try not to get too either aggressive or intoxicated or both to deny others fun, and that doesn't always work out.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go back to being a 21-year-old who spent his rent money getting to a pro tour and then needing to grind and hate and,
Yes.
offend to win.
Yes.
I mean, there are matches across the course of my life where, for instance, I was playing Dredge against
God, I hate your deck choices.
The extended deck where you were allowed to play the Hexmage combo. So you had Chrome Mox, you had Hexmage, you had Thopter's Sword, you had the Depths, and you had Muddle the Mixture. And I wound up...
That deck had a dumb name. I could just never remember what it was.
And somebody will find it. From Thopter Depths?
Maybe I don't.
think
We
it had
stopped
an
naming
actual.
shit the cool
It had
way.
an actual stupid
Yeah,
name. if
I like all
when
the
we named decks.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, when you
Tin
played the
Fins,
mono
dude.
blue, when you played the mono blue deck that used to make people sacrifice permanents with pirates, but then you played all the cards except the pirates. What's the name of that deck? But Pirates.
because it didn't play pirates.
And no one
That's
let
pretty
me
good.
write But Pirates and then publish it anywhere on the internet.
That's
so what is
pretty
your
good.
actual favorite unconventional deck name? Unless it's Butt Pirates.
No, that's a great one. I think the one that never worked for me was the one that I never got to publish because, again, I don't think I got there fast enough, was years before they had printed the cards that had the ability or the keyword dredge. I'd been at a tournament where one of the most famous players in the Midwest, what was his name? Shouted at one of my best friends who was about to win the tournament, "Fun? You want to have fun, you stay home and draw pictures of animals. Now win the fucking game."
That's
Like,
fucking good.
shouted it
That's
across
really
a
good.
conference room that was walls removed, 300 people deep.
That's really funny.
That
That's
stayed
great.
with me for so long that I think that if I ever got to name the original Dredge deck, I would have named it Pictures of Animals. In honor of the fact that there
good.
was no fun in it, and you literally just did one thing every time.
All right. Well, to wrap this up, we are here in a very warm room, and everyone is hungry. Everyone is getting slightly cranky. At least I know I am.
People are starting to put their clothes back on.
So we got to put our clothes back on and wrap up this podcast. Anthony's got to finish up.
All 12 of Espy's abs are going to go away.
Exactly. So we're gonna wrap it up here. This has been the O2 Dropcast. With us today, we had Mr. Michael Day.
Thank you all so much. I apologize for my deck choice, and I don't ever apologize for winning.
Okay, perfect, dude. And then we had Mr. Anthony Rivera.
Thank you for having me, and always remember, stay positive, test negative.
Perfect. And Mr. Daniel Espinoza.
I got nothing. Have
Thank
a good day.
That's your new quote. Daniel I got nothing.
He
And
plays Turbo Depth.
Turbo
Exactly.
Ducks.
Exactly. This has been the O2 Dropcast. I'm your host, Zach Zent. Thank you for listening. And remember, if we don't talk about it, you shouldn't fucking care about it.